Chapter 536. Just as Yang Chung was muttering to himself and making his judgment, the three Sargeras in the sky collided with the two angels, creating intense sparks. Just as everyone was shocked by Sargeras' ultimate skill, they were all dumbfounded in the next second. The two angels waved the huge platinum light swords in their hands and met the three fast figures viciously. They had originally planned to repel the three clones in a perfect half-arc, but unexpectedly, before the two angels could touch them, the three figures themselves ran into trouble. Bam, bam, bam. With three dull explosions, the three Sargeras transformed into three balls of black demonic flames at the same time. Like three huge fireballs, they engulfed the bodies of the two angels. Fake! The people at the side also understood the situation. The three Sargeras were all illusions created by the demonic flames. They were just anthropomorphic grenades thrown by Sargeras, because the demonic flames were a legendary ultimate skill of the blood race. No one present knew that it could be used in such a way. But where was the real Sargeras? Before everyone could look away from the black flames burning in the sky, a sudden confrontation on the ground had already begun. Sargeras' speed had almost broken through the restraints of space. In the blink of an eye, he had covered a distance of nearly 100 meters and appeared in front of Bishop Cruyff. "Go to hell with your damned god." Sargeras stood proudly in front of Cruyff, his eyes cold and callous. The demonic flame, sword in his hand, slashed downwards for real. Everyone knew that although it seemed like the battle between Sargeras and the two angels was only happening in this area, it was only because they had concentrated their power in a small area. If some of the so-called experts present had joined in, just the aura alone would have been enough to scare them off. After all, Sargeras' power was close to that of a god. Even if he could not control space, the energy he gathered could break through it. And at the moment, although Bishop Cruyff had an impressive level of cultivation and light spells, he was the weakest link in his body. He was facing Sargeras, whose body and technique were superb. At such a close distance, no one thought he could survive. It's over. Sargeras had killed Cruyff, who had been supporting him, with perfect deception and skills. Then, the Vatican had almost no chance of winning. That was what almost everyone was thinking. Lilith, who was in a fierce battle, also felt excited for her father's victory. But no one noticed that Cruyff didn't panic in the slightest when Sargeras got close to him. In fact, there was even a hint of anticipation. "I don't think so." That was the only thought in Cruyff's mind as he faced the long sword of black flames. Almost at the same time, a translucent shield of light suddenly appeared around Cruyff. Just as the demonic flame longsword was about to reach his forehead, the shield blocked the longsword's momentum. How is this possible? Sargeras couldn't believe what he was seeing. What kind of power was this? It could actually defend against his thunderous strike? But in the next second, Sargeras understood everything. Go. Cruyff's aged face was blood red, and his onion nose was especially prominent. He roared with all his might. A ray of silver-white light suddenly burst out from Cruyff's chest. Poof! A crisp, piercing sound sent chills down everyone's spines. After that strange silver light beam hit Sargeras, it actually pierced through his unimaginably tough body. Sargeras looked down in disbelief at the 3-inch wide hole in his chest that was still smoking. It was a very strange feeling, because in his memory, he hadn't been injured for thousands of years. His body felt weak. The power that had pierced through him had actually started to corrode the energy in his body. Sargeras' legs turned to jelly, and he fell. Seeing the prince of the blood race, who was like the king of the dark world, finally fall at his feet, the white-haired Cardinal Cruyff panted a few times. Then there was wild joy in his eyes. "Ha! Ha! I did it! I did it!" Cruyff opened his arms wide and laughed maniacally. "Sargeras! I've defeated Sargeras. Lord, did you see that? I've avenged the priest." Lilith, who was locked in combat with Gabriel, felt her heart sink. Gabriel took the opportunity to cut open another wound on her arm, and a few streaks of pale, golden blood flew out. But Lilith couldn't be bothered anymore. She landed next to Sargeras, and while Cruyff was still laughing, she carried Sargeras to a spot further away. "Father, how? How could this be?" Lilith couldn't accept the fact that her invincible father had been pierced through and was weakening. The demonic flames around Sargeras' body couldn't hold on any longer and gradually disappeared. His snow-white face turned livid as he coughed and stared at Cruyff in the distance. "I was too careless. I didn't expect it to be the spear of Longinus." "Humph, at least you're knowledgeable." The smug Cruyff wasn't in a hurry to launch another round of attacks. With a wave of his hand, the silver radiance appeared again, but this time he held it in his hand. Only then did everyone see that it was a spear that was a few centimeters taller than Cruyff's tree. It had a simple and unadorned design. Its entire body was silver and spiral-shaped, and its tip was stained with blood. The holy weapon of the Vatican, the spear of Longinus. No wonder it could even pierce through the body of a member of the blood race like Sargeras. Yang Cheng clicked his tongue and shook his head. No one knew what he meant. Sauron and the others were already dazzled by what they saw. Listening to Yang Cheng talking about the origin of the spear, Sauron suddenly thought of something and said, "Could it be the legendary spear of Longinus that pierced through the body of Jesus Christ and was later stained with the blood of the Son of God? So this spear actually exists?" I've only heard that ancient European monarchs could rule the world if they got their hands on this spear. That's why they fought over it. I didn't expect it to be in the hands of the Vatican. Yang Cheng shrugged. It's not too surprising that this spear is in the hands of the Vatican. After all, it's not a divine weapon, just a holy weapon. It's on the same level as Lilith's demonic weapon, the butcher's knife. It's only extremely lethal against dark creatures like the blood race. However, the fact that the Vatican dared to let Cruyff use it means that Cruyff's strength has already convinced the Pope. At this moment, the two six-winged angels were no longer in a hurry to attack. They landed behind Cruyff, while Gabriel put away his greatsword and stood at the side. Obviously, to the Vatican, the outcome of the battle was already decided. All that was left was to use the spear of Longinus to end the long lives of the father and daughter of the blood race, and take away the sword of Thanatos. No one would dare to complain to them. Their strength proved that they had the right to do so. The people from Takamagara and the sword in the stone didn't make a sound. Although they were proud, they wouldn't recklessly fight against the two six-winged angels. Just from their aura alone, they knew that they couldn't win. Cruyff held the spear that was emitting a faint silver glow. He slowly approached Lilith and Sargeras as if he was taking a stroll in the park. Sargeras' strength was gradually fading. Although it was slow, the wound caused by Longinus couldn't be healed quickly. Moreover, it limited his strength. At this moment, he didn't even have half of Lilith's strength. He no longer had any confidence that he could stop Cruyff. "Baby, I'm sorry. Your mother definitely won't forgive me. I even said that I'll go back immediately after coming out to play." Sargeras smiled bitterly. Even though Lilith looked domineering and pampered, she couldn't help but tear up. Even though she had lived for more than 200 years, she was still a young person to the blood race. "I'll protect you, father," Lilith said stubbornly. She pulled out the butcher's knife again. Sargeras reluctantly reached out and stroked Lilith's amber hair. He said lovingly, "Lilith, let's go. If you're lucky, you can escape. You can't even deal with a six-winged angel. Don't do anything stupid. We can only blame ourselves for underestimating the enemy. I was too arrogant and thought that I alone was enough." Sigh. Hearing her father's sigh, Lilith suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and her beautiful eyes revealed a hint of splendor. Seeing that Cruyff was closing in on her with an excited smile, Lilith suddenly stood up and threw the long black box in her hand backward. No one had expected this action. Lilith had actually thrown away the sword of Thanatos that she had spent so much effort to protect until now. Why? It was very simple. The person Lilith had thrown it to was Yang Cheng, who had been standing there doing nothing all this time. Yang Cheng looked at the black box in front of him in a daze. He instinctively reached out to catch it, but as soon as his hand touched it, he suddenly realized, oh no, he had fallen into a trap? As expected, Lilith wiped away her tears and turned back with a charming smile. She winked at Yang Cheng and said, "Dear Your Majesty Pluto, it's all your fault. You forced us to snatch it for you. Now that my father is injured, you'd better hold the black box yourself." What? What did Lilith mean by that? They were ordered to snatch the divine artifact. Everyone's gaze, including Cruyff and the others from the Vatican, was unfriendly as they stared at Yang Cheng and the black box in his hand. Yang Cheng let out a bitter laugh. Lilith's brain worked really fast. She actually used such a method to drag him down. Did she not know that as long as he threw the divine artifact back to her, the other party would understand that she was lying? However, Yang Cheng did not do that, because when Yang Cheng looked at Lilith again, he saw in her beautiful red eyes a plea that he had never seen before. At this moment, this proud, pure-blooded female blood race let go of her arrogance and reserve. She tried her best to use her gaze to tell Yang Cheng, "I beg you, please have pity on us. Save us." Lilith was not a woman who was afraid of death. In fact, death might be something exciting to her. However, it did not mean that she was willing to see her father stabbed to death by the people from the Vatican with a divine artifact. Even if they were blood clan members, even if they did not have beating hearts, they were still relatives connected by blood. Yang Cheng had to admit helplessly that after returning to Huaxia for 2 years, his heart had really softened a lot. Even though he knew that this woman was framing him, he felt powerless to refuse her plea. In the past, he did not have parents. But now he had a mother, family. He could understand this feeling. Sighing, Yang Cheng threw the black box in his hand to Sauron. Then, he took a step forward and said loudly to everyone present, especially Cruyff, "That's right. I was the one who ordered this father and daughter to steal the sword. I'm protecting Sargeras and his daughter." Chapter 537. When Yang Cheng stepped forward, Sauron and the rest were all confused. They knew very well that if Yang Cheng wanted to snatch the sword, he wouldn't need to send anyone else. However, these people had followed Yang Cheng for many years, and they knew that Yang Cheng didn't like to be questioned, so they didn't say anything. Abbess Yin Miao didn't understand why Yang Cheng would help the Covenant of Darkness against the Vatican. However, she was alone, and the interests of these organizations didn't matter much, so she couldn't be bothered to ask. Sargeras, who had closed his eyes to accept his unexpected failure, couldn't help but open them again when he heard Yang Cheng's reply. He turned his head with much difficulty and looked at Yang Cheng, his deep eyes filled with confusion. Lilith, on the other hand, was trembling all over. It wasn't because she was crying or afraid, but because she was too excited. Originally, she had no choice but to ask for help. She didn't think that this smiling Nether King would really be a soft-hearted person. However, she didn't expect that her final desperate move would actually succeed. "Thank you." Lilith couldn't say anything else other than using her gaze to express the simplest of emotions. Yang Cheng couldn't stand the female blood clan member's pitiful gaze. It was like a rose with thorns had turned into a delicate lily in an instant. The contrast was too great. Yang Cheng chose to ignore the father and daughter duo. Actually, the reason he stepped forward was not only because he was friends with Lilith and felt pity for her, but also because the other party was the Vatican, which gave Yang Cheng a lot of ideas. After all, the Vatican had tried to ally with other organizations to kill him in Japan. This wasn't a vengeance that needed to be avenged, but if the other party didn't know what was good for them, he might as well do them a favor and get rid of them. When Bishop Cruyff heard Lilith call Yang Cheng Pluto, he stopped in his tracks and stared at Yang Cheng. It was only when Yang Cheng stood in front of the father and daughter duo that he asked, "Are you really the Pluto, the new Hades?" Yang Cheng didn't reply immediately. Instead, he squatted down, held Sargeras' wrist with one hand, and channeled a strand of innate true chi into it. Sargeras had never felt the vigorous vital energy of the endless resolve restoration scripture before. He only felt the pain in his chest being immediately suppressed by this energy and not continuing to spread. He couldn't help but be shocked. This young lord actually had this kind of ability hidden within him. Standing behind Cruyff, the leader of the Crusaders, Gabriel, had seen Yang Cheng in Zhonghai before. Previously, because Yang Cheng was keeping a low profile, he did not notice. Now that he saw him, his expression changed. He walked up to Cruyff and confirmed Yang Cheng's identity. Once Yang Cheng's identity was confirmed, not only did the people from the Vatican change their expressions, but the other members of the organizations around the venue also had different expressions. The people from Takahura and the Sword in the Stone were all aware of Yang Cheng's background, so they weren't too surprised. On the other hand, people like Nararahayan and Prince who held grudges against Yang Cheng looked extremely cold. However, the representatives of the Jaguar, Blue Storm, the Soviet Medal, and other organizations and mercenaries from various countries revealed a variety of expressions of fear, shock, and fanaticism. After all, Yang Cheng hadn't been active in the world for more than 2 years. This first god-slayer since ancient times had retreated bravely in the face of adversity. There were too many mysterious and shocking battle records. The 100-year-old Cruyff didn't make much of a move. He was only annoyed that Yang Cheng ignored him. Now that he heard Gabriel's confirmation, he couldn't help but sneer. I didn't expect that the first god-slayer to become a god 2 years ago would be such a young man. Yang Cheng stood up and glanced at Cruyff. Let's go. I'll let Sargeras and Lilith leave safely. Don't waste any more time here. I didn't plan to stain my hand with blood this time. Humph. Cruyff squinted his eyes and lifted his head. Pluto, it seems like you're just an ordinary man. You think I don't know that you're just bluffing? According to the Treaty of Gods, even if you're powerful enough, we're not gods, and you don't have the right to lift the seal. You don't have the help of divine power, but the Vatican has 2 holy warriors at the level of 6-winged angels. They're using the genuine divine power of light. Even the demigod level Sargeras fell under my lance of Longinus. Do you really think that we'll be afraid of you, a mere Pluto who can't lift the seal, and an ordinary human? As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 6-winged angels behind Cruyff spread their wings again and flashed to the left and right in front of Yang Cheng, forming a pincer attack. The wings, condensed from the divine power of light, emitted an immense pressure. The faint golden halo seemed to ripple a lake, stirring up strong winds and sending sand and pebbles flying. Many of the people nearby had no choice but to retreat. Such a terrifying aura made many of them sigh. Perhaps even the Pluto couldn't deal with the Vatican that had 6-winged angels if he could lift the seal. Cruyff's face was flushed as he looked around at the terrified gazes. Yang Cheng didn't move an inch. He curled his lips and said, "It seems like you don't intend to listen to me." Listen to you? Ha ha, young man, don't be too full of yourself. Others call you a god, but in my eyes, you're no threat at all. Cruyff laughed maniacally. For the sake of the merciful Lord, I don't want to hurt the innocent. If you hand over these filthy dark creatures and the ominous divine weapon, the sword of Thanatos, to the Vatican, I won't pursue your arrogant words. Oh, it seems like you're still thinking about that sword, Yang Cheng said calmly. He waved his hand behind him, and the black box that Sauron was holding flew into Yang Cheng's hand. Yang Cheng held the tightly locked black alloy box in his hand. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he smashed the seemingly indestructible combination lock with his fist. Opening the black box, a 3-foot-long ancient silver-gray weapon that resembled a Roman sword lay quietly in the compartment inside. Many of the people present swallowed their saliva. That was a divine weapon. Would there be any special reaction if it was opened so easily? However, the result was disappointing for many people. Yang Chen deftly took out the silver-gray sword that didn't seem to have any special characteristics. He swung the sword a few times without releasing the slightest bit of power. The only part of the sword that had patterns were the runes on the body of the sword. The edge of the sword looked extremely dull, making people wonder if it could be used as a sword. This is the sword of Thanatos. It can't be. Why is it so ordinary? It's not even as good as my dagger. Maybe we don't understand its use. Many people began to whisper among themselves. It was true that the mysteriousness of the sword had been greatly diminished. However, those who were truly knowledgeable wouldn't be too surprised. Divine weapons were not like sacred or demonic weapons that exuded power. The lance of Longinus in Cruyff's hand and the butcher's knife in Lilith's hand were dazzling and majestic. One look, and anyone could tell that they were divine weapons. However, divine weapons were much more low-key and reserved. Just like the spear of the war god in Ares' hand, the seemingly ordinary bronze spear could lock space with astonishing power when used by Ares. It was just like how a true expert would hide all of his power in a way that ordinary people could not pry into. Divine weapons were not something that ordinary people could understand. At this moment, it wasn't just Cruyff and the others who were staring at the sword of Thanatos in Yongcheng's hand. Nirahyan from Takamagura, Lola, Prince, and the others from the Sword in the Stone were also staring at it with burning gazes. Others could not feel it, but they could acutely sense that this ordinary-looking sword could make them feel an oppressive feeling of death. This feeling was not something that an ordinary weapon could give off. Yongcheng chuckled and casually put the sword back into the box. He closed the box and said, "It seems that you all want this sword very much. In fact, I have no interest in this sword. I have always liked to fight with my hands. I don't have any interest in weapons. But since this is something that the Vatican wants very much, I'll take it." "You will regret your choice, young man," Cruyff said angrily. "I made my choice because you made me uncomfortable," Yongcheng replied calmly and threw the black box behind him. Sauron caught the black box. Thinking that Yongcheng had given him such an enviable divine weapon, he could not help but smile bitterly. However, he did not dare say that he would not take it. "Good, good, good," Cruyff said 3 times in a row. His face was flushed and his eyes were ferocious. He raised his voice and laughed. "Since you have chosen to go against us, I will not persuade you any further. I know that the plot in Japan did not manage to kill you. But do you really think that the Vatican can't do anything to you? You are a god, but without divine power, you are just a human. I will let you have a taste of the power of a 6-winged angel. I want to see how you can survive without divine power. I don't want to waste any more time. I will let you see the true power of a 6-winged angel. I, Cruyff, do not mind slaying a god." As Cruyff finished speaking, he pointed the lance of Longinus at the sky. Large amounts of light rained down once again. The divine power of the 2 6-winged angels on his left and right increased tremendously. It was as if they had transformed into 2 platinum-colored beams of light. Wielding a platinum-colored giant sword, they flapped their wings and flew toward Yongcheng. The whistling sound of the 6-winged seraphim's attack even caused the surrounding space to distort and split apart. Its godly speed left everyone present in disbelief. They had clearly not used their full strength when they were fighting Sargeras just now. Yongcheng was expressionless. He did not even look or react. He only took a step toward where Cruyff was standing. Chapter 538. Boom! Boom! 2 loud sounds of metal clashing only reached everyone's ears a second after the light appeared. The huge sword formed by the divine power of light had caused a huge explosion, and Yongcheng's body was drowned in the dazzling light. "Your Majesty, Pluto," even Sauron and the rest, who had absolute faith in Yongcheng, could not believe that Yongcheng had been caught in a pincer attack. Many of the onlookers felt their legs turn to jelly. The condensed ball of light was like a nuclear bomb exploding in a small area. The turbulent flow of energy within it was enough to grind the ground around Yongcheng into powder. The Vatican's thousands of years of accumulation is indeed not to be underestimated. Nirahyan, who was standing among the people of Takamagura, murmured. Prince, who was in the stone sword, clenched his fists. Looking at the powerful light ball, he hissed, "Even this demon will have such a day." Sargeras and his daughter, on the other hand, looked miserable. They did not expect the 6-winged angels to have hidden their strength. Lilith's eyes were filled with tears of hatred and regret. Almost no one present thought that Yongcheng could survive, because the power displayed by the 2 6-winged angels was completely beyond their imagination. However, just when everyone thought that the outcome had been decided, that incomparably startling figure actually appeared in the center of the ball of light. As the dust and light dissipated, Yongcheng's figure gradually became clearer. He stood there as always, as calm and untainted as always. He's actually unscathed? This was the only thought in everyone's mind at the same time. The visual impact was even greater than the full force attack of the two angels. Yang Cheng did not speak. Under everyone's shocked gaze, including Cruyff's, he took another step closer to Cruyff. Cruyff murmured, "How is this possible? How'd he block it? How?" The two six-winged angels obviously did not expect Yang Cheng to be unscathed. After flying back into the air, the light sword in their hands condensed again, and this time, it doubled in size as they prepared to attack again. "Quick, kill him now. He must have used all his strength to block the attack, just now." The only possibility that Cruyff could think of was that Yang Cheng had used all his strength to block the attack, and his indifferent expression was precisely Yang Cheng's stalling tactic, a bluff. Cruyff cast a few blessings in a row, raising the angel's speed and attack power to the peak. Yang Cheng paid no heed to everyone's shocked gazes. He took one step at a time, slowly approaching where Cruyff was standing. There was a faint smile on his face, and in his eyes there was a hint of mockery and mischievous joy. Standing at the back, Sauron and the others were extremely excited. Their blood was boiling, and they even wanted to dance for joy. As expected of His Majesty Pluto, I knew that no one could defeat him. Of course our faith will never fall. It's actually the undead's walk. Ha, Sauron, how many years has it been since we last saw it? Ha! Listening to the conversation between the mercenaries and the head assassin, Abbess Yun Miao frowned and asked, "What's the undead's walk?" Sauron smiled mysteriously. "It's a battle technique that His Majesty Pluto liked back in the day. Undead's walk was the name given to him by the people around us. His Majesty Pluto didn't really like his own name. Battle technique?" Abbess Yun Miao was getting more and more curious. "That's right," Sauron nodded and said proudly, "Back in the day, whenever His Majesty Pluto met a strong opponent and was surrounded, he liked to use the method of not fighting back. He was continuously attacked, and in the process of being attacked, he would walk slowly to the front of the enemy leader. His Majesty Pluto once said that he wanted his opponents to know that even if he just stood there and let them attack him without fighting back, they would still be no match for His Majesty. Making the opponent lose all faith and fall into the abyss of despair is the most complete victory. That's why we're used to calling His Majesty Pluto's steps to take the leader's life undead's walk." Abbess Yun Miao felt her scalp go numb. She turned back to look at the figure that was approaching Cruyff with small steps. She finally realized how crazy this man had been when he was overseas. Sauron listened to his colleague's discussion and said doubtfully, "But His Majesty Pluto really didn't remove his seal. He was actually able to block such a powerful attack that could even tear space apart. What kind of power did he use?" The self-protection ability that Yang Cheng had displayed just now had already exceeded the impression that these people had of his strength in their memories. At this moment, Abbess Yun Miao smiled proudly. "That was our Hua Xia's internal energy. Yang Cheng used our Shushan sect's endless resolve restoration scripture. The power that blocked the attack just now was the Xiantian true qi of the Xiantian full cycle." Sauron and the others heard this and looked at each other, but they still didn't understand. What was internal energy? What was Xiantian? Just as the few of them were discussing, the two six-winged angels, who had finished accumulating their power, finally struck again. Yang Cheng's accidental injury had hurt their dignity. The two beams of light once again landed on Yang Chen's head with the force of a thunderbolt. The ground that had already sunk in by tens of meters was once again swept up a large amount of mud and stones. The entire roof of the venue, accompanied by a strange twisting and tearing force, swelled and exploded. Are they trying to sink the island? Many of them had already begun to yell in anger. The blinding light was so bright that they couldn't open their eyes. "Kill him! Kill him!" Archbishop Cruyff had already descended into madness. He yelled and yelled, enjoying the sight of Yang Cheng being drowned by the surging divine power of light. But in just a few seconds, after the flames dissipated, Archbishop Cruyff's heart turned cold. He saw Yang Cheng's slack figure walking toward him with a smile, as if he was taking a stroll in a garden. If one were to look closely, they would discover that there was a faint wave of energy around Yang Cheng's body. The wave seemed gentle, but it had already prevented anything from touching Yang Cheng. Abbess Yun Miao was the only one present who could recognize that it was the protective Xiantian Gang Qi that one's internal energy had obtained after reaching the perfected Xiantian stage. In fact, back when he was comprehending the 9th level of the Endless Resolve Restoration Scripture, Rebirth, in Japan, Yang Cheng had already felt that his Xiantian True Qi was already comparable to divine power. After the battle with Ares, when Yang Cheng used his Xiantian True Qi to break through Ares' space freeze, he was even more certain that when one's internal energy reached a high level, it would surpass divine power. Yang Cheng had obtained proof of that from Ling Shuzi in Hongmeng. Although it wasn't like divine power that could control space and instantly topple mountains and overturn seas, the profound use of internal energy was far better than the carelessness of divine power. Therefore, in the face of the Vatican's arrogance, Yang Cheng simply chose to use the Revenant's waltz, which he hadn't used for many years. Not only did it prove that his conclusion was correct, it also made everyone understand the difference in strength between him and them, so that there wouldn't be anyone who was ignorant enough to jump in front of him and cause him trouble. At this moment, Cruyff's face was ashen, and the two angels had already stopped attacking. Sargeras and his daughter, as well as Sauron and the rest, who were at the back, had already seen the outcome of the battle and looked relaxed. Cruyff started to retreat. 1 step, 2 steps. As Yang Cheng got closer, he started to feel afraid. When everything that had happened was completely different from what he had expected, the most primitive fear of humans started to grow and spread. No, impossible. How could you still be alive? Cruyff swallowed his saliva and ordered Gabriel and the 2 six-winged angels beside him, shouting, "Attack! Attack! Don't let him come over!" He couldn't care less about losing his composure, because he could clearly see that in Yang Cheng's eyes, he was already no different from a corpse. However, Yang Cheng wasn't interested in Cruyff's shouts and continued to approach the arrogant red-robed old man step by step. The 2 six-winged angels tried to attack again, but they could no longer do so. The reason was that Yang Cheng and Cruyff were too close, and if they attacked rashly, Cruyff would be affected as well. Moreover, that all-out killing move just now couldn't kill Yang Cheng. Even the 6-winged seraphim couldn't squander his divine power like that for a long time. Moreover, they were only possessed angels that had descended onto the holy body. The continuous overuse of divine power had caused the wings and radiance of the 2 six-winged angels to gradually dim. Everyone on the scene knew that the time for the angels to descend was almost here. And at that moment, Yang Cheng had already walked in front of Cruyff. Plop! As Cruyff retreated, his heel hit a piece of gravel, and he fell to the ground. He could no longer hold onto the spear of Longinus firmly. Yang Cheng tilted his head and sighed, a mocking expression on his face. Bending down, Yang Cheng grabbed Cruyff's collar with one hand and lifted the red-robed man up as casually as if he were a trash bag. Staring at Cruyff's face, Yang Cheng asked calmly, "Why aren't you saying anything? Didn't you just say you want to kill a god?" Cruyff swallowed hard, his face trembling, his eyes full of fear and panic. Even if Yang Cheng had pointed a gun at him, Cruyff wouldn't have fallen into such a state where he didn't even dare to speak. This was because Yang Cheng's ability to withstand such a shocking attack, as well as his every step toward Cruyff, were like the Grim Reaper's scythe shattering his mental barriers, scraping away all of Cruyff's calmness and confidence. This was a complete and thorough deprivation of his personality, a trampling on it. This man was simply in existence like Satan. Everything he had done just now was to make him unable to muster up any strength to resist. Moreover, what was irresistible was that this demon had succeeded. Cruyff's legs felt as if hundreds of kilograms of lead were hanging from them. He hung there in the air, his body stiff, not daring to move at all. The smile on Yang Chen's face gradually turned cold. His pair of eyes were like black crystals, cold yet incomparably deep. Before you die, I just want to tell you one thing. The reason why I can become a god is not because I have divine power, but because even if I don't become a god, I am still a god. Chapter 539. Every word that Yang Cheng said was like a steel nail, hammering directly into the hearts of Cruyff and everyone else around him. Only when they saw Yang Cheng walk out unscathed from that terrifying and perverted attack did everyone finally realize that God really existed. The two six-winged angels also happened to have exhausted the time and energy to descend at this time. The two holy bodies fell from the sky and turned back into different golden-haired young men. They squatted down while panting. Obviously, they had overdrawn themselves. Everyone understood that the Vatican had lost its power. Seeing that Cruyff's eyes were starting to lose focus, Yang Cheng knew that the old man no longer had the courage to live. He shook his head and raised his left hand, ready to smash the old man's skull. "Stop!" Suddenly, Gabriel, who had been watching nervously from the side, yelled. Yang Cheng turned his head. "Is there anything else? Or do you want to die first?" Facing Yang Cheng's seemingly calm face, Gabriel took a step back in disappointment. This tall crusader felt like duckweed in the water, floating without any support. Your Majesty Pluto, you can't kill the bishop, or else you'll definitely regret it." Gabriel used all his strength to finish his sentence. Yang Cheng turned his head to look at the zombie-like Cruyff and then at the nervous Gabriel. A strange light flashed in his eyes, and he threw Cruyff to the ground with a smile before saying, "Tell me, what will I regret?" Gabriel immediately gathered a bit of courage, because at least this man still had something to consider. "Your Majesty Pluto, I don't think you came to Europe alone this time," Gabriel said after sorting out his emotions. Yang Cheng revealed a look of realization and smiled. "You guys did a good job investigating." "That's right, I brought my woman with me." "Since that's the case, does Your Majesty Pluto know where Miss Lin is now?" Gabriel asked with bright eyes. Yang Cheng narrowed his eyes. "You even investigated her background. I say, no wonder you could become the leader of the Crusaders. It seems that even a bishop like Cruyff does not have the courage to speak up at a time like this. All right, I'll be honest. I don't know where she is. She should still be waiting for me in Paris." Gabriel seemed to have regained his confidence. "That might not be the case." Yang Cheng's face turned cold. "What do you mean?" "Your Majesty Pluto will understand what I mean immediately." Saying that, Gabriel took out a pocket-sized, unlimited communication device, which looked like a Bluetooth headset, and silently put it on her ear. At this time, most of the people in the venue had already left. After all, the battle scene just now was too dangerous. Those who felt that they were not strong enough did not even dare to stay in the venue. Many of them had even fled back to the Louis XVI super cruise ship, ready to leave the island by ship at any time. Therefore, in the spacious venue, or rather the ruins of the battle, there were only a few dozen people from the strongest organizations. It was this group of people like Yang Cheng, who looked at Gabriel with puzzlement. They put on their communication devices, and no one knew who they were calling. "You should have seen the situation at the scene." Gabriel began to communicate with the other side of the communication device. "We can give up on our original plan. Bishop Cruyff has been defeated. It's your turn now," Gabriel said again. Then, Gabriel nodded and turned to look at Fodessa and the other officials of the 7th Bureau. If Fodessa and the others weren't the host, they would have left the venue long ago. Now, they were covered in dust and looked very embarrassed. "Deputy Director Fodessa, there should be equipment like monitors that can be used in this venue, right?" Gabriel asked. Fodessa was stunned. He was a little confused, but he was experienced and quickly calmed himself down. He nodded and said, "Yes, there are spare monitors in the underground base." The reason why they could only use part of the monitors was because there was no other way. In the battle just now, half of the base had been razed to the ground. The top was barely covered, and the only usable electronic equipment could only be found in other areas. Gabriel nodded in satisfaction and said to Yang Cheng, "Your Majesty Pluto, please follow me to watch a video. You can decide if you want to kill them all after watching it." Yang Cheng seemed to have realized something. He sighed and said, "Let's go." Gabriel didn't stand on ceremony. He let Fodessa lead the way and led him and Yang Chung to the area of the base where they could watch the video. There were only a few dozen people at the scene. They were naturally curious about what had happened. They couldn't care less about their vigilance and followed behind Yang Chung and the others, going deeper into the base. Sargeras, supported by Lilith, followed in with Sauron, Abbess Yun Miao, and the others. The two blonde, holy-bodied youths pulled up the dazed and dejected Cruyff and followed Gabriel. After passing through a few ruins, they came to a relatively intact conference room. However, the ceiling of the room was a little broken, and they could see the night sky and stars outside. Because the conference room was close to the sea, they could even hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Deputy Director Fodessa, please turn on the monitor and adjust it to receive satellite signals, Gabriel ordered. Fodessa didn't dare to disobey. Although he felt pained by the mess in his heart, he could only brace himself and go forward. He turned on a large monitor on the wall and adjusted it to receive satellite images. Soon, after receiving the images, a clear image of the satellite transmission appeared in front of everyone. Anyone with a discerning eye could immediately tell that it was the scene on the deck of a warship. The warship was parked in the sea. Behind it was the dark sky, and the lights on the deck were extremely bright. They could see the railings and some anti-aircraft cannons at the back. Just as everyone was wondering why there wasn't a single person in the picture, a group of people finally walked out from inside. It was a group of tall men wearing black Secret Service uniforms, goggles, and helmets. Yang Chung couldn't be more familiar with their attire. The kidnappers had worn the same attire. On their arms and chests, there was the iconic golden sun totem. People from the realm of God. Some of the people present had already recognized the origin of this group of people. Obviously, before coming to the conference, all parties had already prepared information on the realm of God and Apollo. After the appearance of this group of men in black, a few tied-up people were brought to the deck. Yang Cheng's gaze froze. The tied-up people were Lin Ruoshi, Stern and his sister, and Harry and his mother. However, the five of them were currently unconscious. They were carried to the deck by a few men and thrown directly onto the cold steel plate. Harry, seeing this scene, Fodessa was the first to scream. Seeing his wife and son there, he widened his eyes in disbelief. Commander Gabriel, what is the meaning of this? What is the relationship between the realm of God and the Vatican? Fodessa was, after all, a leader of the Security Bureau who had held a high position for many years. He immediately understood many things and turned to glare at Gabriel. Storm Lola, the sword in the stone, looked at Gabriel with disdain and sneered. Do you even need to ask? The despicable Vatican is definitely in cahoots with the realm of God. What a bunch of scum. I didn't expect the Vatican to fall into cahoots with a terrorist organization. Finally realizing that religion can't conquer the world, you want to resort to crafty plots and schemes? What a group of Western monks with human faces but hearts of beasts. The Maokong prostitute of Takamagara sneered. Gabriel was unmoved by these words and continued to stare at the screen. Yang Chung, on the other hand, looked at the image of Lin Ruoshi lying on the deck in silence. Sauron and the others, on the other hand, looked anxious. Abbess Yun Miao's hands were covered in cold sweat. At this moment, an unusual figure slowly walked out from the screen. It was a man of medium build wearing a white shirt and pants. On the chest area of his shirt was an enlarged golden sun totem. The man also wore a helmet on his head. However, his helmet was similar to that of an ancient Roman general, only revealing a pair of cold eyes. On the forehead of the helmet, there was also a golden sun totem. The man probably had a screen connected to the one on the island through a satellite, so he could clearly see what was happening on the island. After observing carefully for a while, the man finally opened his mouth and said with a strange, hoarse voice, I think some of you should be able to guess who I am, but let me introduce myself. I am Apollo. Indeed, although most of the people on the island had guessed the man's identity when he appeared, their gazes still sharpened when the man confirmed his identity. Apollo's expression couldn't be seen under his helmet, but his eyes revealed a strange smile. He continued, I know everyone on the island must be very surprised. Why would the Holy See be in contact with me? But I don't think there's anything to discuss. I can give the Vatican what they want, and the Vatican can help me. That's all. Huh. Although I don't know if you're the real Apollo, I really want to know. You said that you can give the Vatican what they want. Do you want the Vatican to rule the world? Rule the world? That's a grand dream. The person who teased Apollo was Ire, a member of Blue Storm who had a conflict with the Jaguar on the ship. On the other side of the screen, Apollo didn't say anything. Instead, he waved to his side. A black-clothed man walked out, holding a golden longbow in his hand. The longbow was engraved with complicated runes and vine-like plant lines. It could be called an exquisite work of art. When everyone saw the longbow, they realized that it was definitely not an ordinary item. It could very well be a divine artifact. However, what puzzled them even more was why Apollo was holding a bow and arrow. Could it be that AI Air had mocked him, and he was going to shoot AI Air with an arrow? What a joke. They were deep in the island, and Apollo was at least a few kilometers away in the sea. They couldn't even see him, so how could he draw the bow? However, what Apollo said next shocked everyone once again. Foolish human, since you doubt my identity and ability, let me tell you the difference between a god and a human. As he spoke, Apollo actually started to draw the bow. When Apollo drew the golden longbow in his hand, golden red flames began to burn on the body of the bow. A flaming arrow condensed from the crimson flames suddenly appeared on the thin silver string of the bow. What kind of weapon is that? Is it Apollo's divine artifact? Someone exclaimed. Yang Chung frowned. He was also a little confused about what was happening in front of him. In the next second, Apollo let go of the bowstring. Idiot, do you think you can really become a god by using a high-tech product to imitate the appearance of a divine artifact? You, Ire, who only treated it as a joke, couldn't finish his sentence. His mouth opened wide, and he was speechless. This was because everyone suddenly saw that outside the broken roof, in the night sky, a golden red gradually began to enlarge, and it was falling towards the base at an incredible speed. Ire, watch out. The Blue Storm member, who was an expert in anti-particle shields, stood in front of Ire. He immediately activated the shield and pulled Ire away from the spot. However, as the two moved, the flaming arrow that was shot at the island actually changed its trajectory. Like a tracking missile, it also changed direction. Bang! The flaming arrow directly penetrated the seemingly sturdy anti-particle shield, piercing the man and Ire's bodies at the same time. At the same time, the two bodies exploded into pieces. Watching the two Arcanists, who were fine just a moment ago, being blown into pieces by a tracking arrow shot from an unknown distance, almost everyone present was stunned. This kind of attack was much more frightening than the battle that razed the base to the ground. If this wasn't something a god could do, could it be a human? Now, do you have any questions? Apollo put down his longbow and asked calmly on the other side of the monitor. Fodessa was the first to kneel on the ground. He stuttered, Apollo, what do you want? Why did you kidnap my wife and son? Apollo ignored Fodessa's question. Instead, he turned to the silent Yang Chung and said, The new Hades, I didn't expect you to appear in this secret meeting. You've caused an accident in my plan. Fortunately, it won't affect the final outcome. Persephone is already in my hands. I think we can have a good talk and have a good cooperation. Chapter 540. Cooperate. Yang Chung chuckled. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment before asking, I'm really curious about your plan. Why do you want to cooperate with me? Apollo said, On the entire island, the only person that I'm interested in talking to is you, Hades. If you're willing to stand with me, then when my plan succeeds, I can hand over half of the European Union to you. Of course, it's only the European Union now. When I continue to expand, when my realm of gods extends to the entire world, I can even let you be on equal footing with me and share the entire world. Apollo's tone was filled with excitement and savagery. His eyes were filled with fanaticism. Everyone on the island sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Apollo's goal is to conquer the entire world. Haha. Just when everyone was frowning, Yangchen couldn't help but laugh out loud. He laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. What are you laughing at, Hades? Apollo asked in annoyance. Yang Cheng waved his hand. Nothing. I'm just thinking that your goal is really grand. Compared to me, who only wants to live an ordinary life, I feel that I'm quite pitiful. In this rotten and dirty world, those humans who are blinded by money and benefits can only truly break free from their shackles after a baptism of blood. Hades, it's fine if you don't understand me. I don't expect anyone to understand my thoughts. I just need to know if you're willing to accept it. As he spoke, Apollo turned around and glanced meaningfully at the unconscious Lin Ruashi and the others on the deck. Yang Cheng tried to hold back his laughter. Tell me, how do you want me to cooperate with you? Yang Cheng's question made everyone on the island look at Yang Cheng nervously. Even the sword in the stone, Takamagara, and the others who had always wanted to take revenge on Yang Cheng knew that they were no match for Yang Cheng after witnessing Yang Cheng effortlessly defeat the church's six-winged angel. If Yang Cheng really agreed to join forces with Apollo, then it was obvious that they were doomed. Straightforward, Apollo laughed sinisterly. What I want you to do is simple. You only need to protect Bishop Cruyff, Captain Gabriel, and the other 3 friends from the Vatican, as well as Deputy Director Fodessa. That way, you can help Deputy Director Fodessa complete a task. Fodessa, whose brain had stopped working, was startled. He mumbled, What is it? Apollo paused for a moment and said, Go to the central underground laboratory and take out the end button. Also, use it outside the range of the explosion. What? Fodessa was a big man. Upon hearing this, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. Lola frowned and asked, Deputy Director Fodessa, what's the end button? Fodessa swallowed his saliva and said, It's the main switch to activate the base's destruction mode. Nuclear bomb? Almost everyone's faces turned pale. They understood what this meant. Military bases often faced undesirable situations, such as being breached by the enemy or being invaded. Therefore, it was crucial to destroy all evidence that was beneficial to the enemy at the last moment. This destruction mode obviously relied on nuclear warheads to sink the entire military base. Even a radius of tens of miles would be affected. After all, the power of a nuclear warhead, even if it wasn't a real atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, or any other supernuclear weapon, was still much more powerful than an ordinary missile. France was the world's 3rd largest stockpile of nuclear warheads. It was a piece of cake for them to deploy, some to sink an island. Apollo continued, Hades, it shouldn't be hard for you to keep these ants on the island forever. If you're willing, you can kill them for me. I only need to let the world know of Apollo's dominance. That's enough. Don't even think about it. A silhouette that hadn't moved all this while suddenly vanished from the spot. In a flash, Narurihayan, the general of Takamagura, appeared behind Fodessa, who was sitting on the ground. Like a ray of silver light, Narurihayan was about to take Fodessa's head. Whoosh! However, before the dagger could swing down, the edge of the blade was caught by a person's hand. Why are you in such a hurry? In the blink of an eye, Yang Chun appeared behind Narurihayan and grabbed the blade with his bare hands. Narurihayan's face was gloomy. He turned around and said, Do I have to wait for him to get the detonator and press the button before I make my move? Pluto, are you that selfish? For the sake of your woman, are you going to let all the people in this world die without a place to be buried? Laura questioned. I knew he was a heartless demon. Let's not beg him. Let's attack together and kill him and Fodessa. Then, we'll fight Apollo to the death. Prince shouted. However, no one else responded to Prince's words. Even the people in the sword and the stone had a troubled look on their faces. After witnessing Yang Cheng's strength, they knew that even if they attacked him together, they would only die faster. Moonlight reflection, suddenly, Narurihayan murmured. His figure dispersed into a ripple and disappeared from Yang Cheng's control. Yang Cheng sighed. Another strange trick. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? In the next second, Yang Cheng extended one of his hands to the left. Narurihayan, who was about to swing his sword down, was firmly fixed in the air. Narurihayan was shocked. He looked at Yang Cheng in disbelief. Previously on the cruise, Yang Cheng clearly didn't notice him and only relied on ranged attacks to guard against him. How could he see through it so easily? Was he really not serious in the fight? Nureyeon asked himself bitterly. Yangchen grinned and said, "This area is now under the control of my Xiantian true qi. Although I can't capture your aura, I can feel the flow of your true qi. Your every move is futile. I admit that I have underestimated you. The strength of a king god is indeed beyond my comprehension." Nureyeon sneered unwillingly. "In that case, you don't even need Fodessa to detonate the nuclear bomb to kill all of us?" "No." Without waiting for Yang Cheng to speak, Gabriel stood up and said, "It's not everyone. His Excellency Apollo has already said it. We, the Vatican, have the sacred mission of educating the new world. The ones who should stay on this island are you, not us." This time, other than Sauron and the rest who had absolute trust in Yang Cheng, the others stared at Yang Cheng nervously. No one would be stupid enough to choose to escape. They knew that even if they evacuated the island in the shortest time possible, they wouldn't be able to leave the range of the nuclear bomb unless their speed was comparable to that of a fighter jet. Moreover, if Yang Cheng really tried to stop them, they wouldn't stand a chance. "Fodessa, what are you hesitating for? Don't you want to reunite with your wife and son?" Apollo asked coldly. "And, Hades, my patience is running out. You have to think this through. Your woman is also in my hands. Compared to your woman, aren't the people on the island all dispensable and lowly microbes?" Yang Cheng ignored Apollo's question. He squatted down and patted Fodessa's shoulder. "Deputy Director Fodessa, I want to know what your choice is." Fodessa's face was covered in sweat. His fingers were clawing the ground until they were bleeding. A trace of ruthlessness and pain appeared on the man's straight face. "I won't detonate it." "What?" Not only the people present, even Gabriel and the other three from the Vatican were shocked by Fodessa's choice. "You idiot, what are you talking about? What does the people here have to do with you? Are you going to abandon your wife and son?" The one who spoke was Cardinal Cruyff, who had regained his sanity. The old man roared angrily, regaining his domineering manner. However, his face was a little haggard, probably due to overexertion. Yang Chun, on the other hand, had a faint smile on his face as he nodded. Fodessa stood up and said to Apollo on the monitor, "I refuse, Apollo. It's impossible for you to control me with my wife and son. Fodessa, am not like some people who use the name of God to do shady things that infuriate the heavens and the people. That's right. I'm just a mixed-blood Frenchman born by a German Nazi and a French traitor. In the eyes of many, even my superiors, I may be a shameless bastard. However, I've been upright for half of my life. My position is earned with my military exploits and my life. I can lower my head to the rich and powerful, apologize to my superiors, but I will never abandon my honor as a French soldier. I will never allow my son, even if he survives, to have a father who lives on betraying his country and sacrificing others." Before Fodessa could finish his words, his eyes were already filled with tears. His solemn and resonant voice stunned everyone present. Many of them even had a tinge of apology and respect in their eyes. Even Nureyeon, who wanted to kill Fodessa, quietly sheathed his katana after a moment of daze. On the monitor, Apollo's eyes were filled with anger. "Do you know what you're saying, Deputy Director Fodessa? Do you think the outcome will change if you don't detonate it?" After saying that, a black palm-sized remote control board suddenly appeared in Apollo's hand. The appearance of this item caused Fodessa to stagger 3 steps back. How did you... Do you think that only the island has a detonator? I already have one in my hands. It's just that I cherish talents and want you to live. Now it seems that you don't deserve to live at all." Apollo shook his head and turned to Yang Chun. "Hades, since Fodessa doesn't want to live, why don't you let him live? Hades, since Fodessa doesn't want to live, bring the 4 from the Vatican and leave the island. Let the others stay." Yang Cheng didn't say anything. He turned back to look at Cruyff, Gabriel, and the other 3. They were already standing together, ready to leave at any time. Yang Cheng walked over to them, under everyone's panicked gaze. "Ha ha, Your Majesty Pluto, it seems that you're indeed wise. Although Cruyff was defeated, he was still very pleased to see Yang Cheng being threatened. Yang Cheng came before the old man and grinned. "Is that so?" Without waiting for Cruyff to say anything, Yang Cheng's hand had already grabbed the top of Cruyff's skull. Crack! With a crisp sound, Cruyff's head exploded like a crushed berry. Red and white matter splattered everywhere, and he was directly smashed into pieces. Chapter 541. He had thought that Yang Cheng was really going to leave with the 4 people from the Vatican, but unexpectedly, Yang Cheng suddenly crushed Cruyff's head. Gabriel watched as the bishop beside him laughed and lost his head. He could not help but widen his eyes and take 2 steps back before he could confirm that what he saw was real. You, how dare you?" Gabriel trembled, unable to speak clearly. Yang Cheng smiled evilly and shook off the blood and filth on his hands. He said slowly, "Why wouldn't I dare? Really, I was just about to kill this old man, and I thought it was a big deal." He actually said something like, "You will regret it," and I was so scared that I did not dare to kill him immediately. "So it was just a small matter. Couldn't you have told me earlier? Did you think that you could stop me from killing you?" Many of the people present were elated. They did not expect that Yang Cheng did not abandon them, and did not intend to kill to help Apollo. On the other side of the screen, Apollo was obviously stunned for a moment before he said angrily, "Hades, don't you know what you are doing? Don't you know that your woman is in my hands? If I wanna, I can kill her in an instant." "I know. TSK, you really caught me. I have many women, and any one of them is my real wife." Yang Cheng shook his head and sighed ruefully. Apollo looked doubtful. "You seem to think that I really don't dare to do it, Hades. Do you really think that I will not dare to kill Persephone because we are both main gods?" Yang Cheng's face suddenly turned cold, and he sneered. "Main god? Fool! Do you really think that I will believe that you are Apollo?" As soon as he said this, not only Apollo was stunned, but everyone present also shuddered and looked at Yang Cheng in shock. Could it be that this Apollo was fake? "Hades, stop bluffing. It's all in vain. If you suspect my identity, I can shoot a few more arrows and let all the ants on the island burn to death in the flames. However, this is unnecessary work," Apollo said. "If you don't agree to my conditions, your woman will die in the next moment. And you, like those people on the island, will die in a nuclear explosion." "Oh? If you really think you can kill me with a nuclear bomb, why did you kidnap my woman?" Yang Cheng asked with a smile. Apollo narrowed his eyes and said, "You are challenging the limits of my patience." Yang Cheng didn't care at all and continued, "Do you know this show of yours is meaningless in my eyes? Because from the very beginning, I knew you were fake. Although you have a weapon that looks pretty good, and your strength is also not bad, it's still not enough. However, you have no idea what a sovereign is. If you were the Lord God, you wouldn't say something like ruling the world. To sovereigns, this was meaningless. There is no need to rely on so many methods and so many people to help you complete this task. I'm guessing that the biggest reason why you want to kill the representatives of various countries through this secret meeting is to cause panic in various countries and turmoil in the world. Didn't you say before that you wanted to kill the current chairman of the European Union, the French president? If you start from the top, sooner or later there will be political turmoil everywhere, which will lead to a world war. Getting what you want from the war, the so-called interests of ruling the world, is the most likely to be achieved. Whatever nonsense you say. I only ask you one thing now. Kill the people on the island, or die with them." Apollo asked loudly. Yang Cheng raised his eyebrows, and his figure flashed again, this time in front of Gabriel. Gabriel suddenly realized something and raised his giant sword to resist. However, one of Yang Cheng's hands was like an indestructible spear. He didn't dodge and directly grabbed the giant's sword. Clang! The heavy giant sword made of fine steel was like a fragile piece of paper. It was shaken by the vast and majestic innate true energy and turned into a pile of pieces. However, Yang Cheng's hand didn't slow down and directly hit Gabriel's chest. Bang! It was like a bomb had exploded in Gabriel's body. Under Gabriel's shocked and furious gaze, his body was torn into pieces. Everyone watched in horror as Yang Cheng retracted his hand. The ground around his feet was already broken into pieces of flesh and bones. Many of the people present felt their scalps go numb. Most of them knew how to kill people, but they had never seen someone kill someone by either crushing their head or shattering their entire body. Why does he have to use such cruel methods to kill people every time? Abbess Yin Miao frowned, feeling a little nauseous. Sauron smiled bitterly. His Majesty Pluto's power is too great. He didn't create this effect on purpose. It's just that the power he uses casually creates a terrifying scene. However, Yang Chung didn't stop there. After dealing with Gabriel, Yang Chung used one hand to crush the necks of the two precious holy bodies of the Vatican. The four people from the Vatican couldn't put up any resistance at all. They were taken care of by Yang Chung in a short minute. On the other side of the screen, Apollo was furious, but he couldn't stop Yang Chung from making his move. At this moment, everyone present believed Yang Cheng's words. Indeed, they realized that this was all a trap set up by the realm of God and the Vatican. If they all died here, and the one who did it was the realm of God, then the French president would be killed as well. The higher-ups of the European Union and the world would panic. Once the situation became unstable, all kinds of fuses could trigger local and global wars. The consequences would be unimaginable. All right, Pluto, it seems like there's no need to talk anymore. Apollo laughed strangely. Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll start with your woman and take care of the hostages. Then, I'll let you all have a taste of being drowned in nuclear bombs. With that, Apollo turned around and walked towards Lin Ruoshi, who was at the back of the deck. Yang Chung, stop him. You're really going to let him touch Ruoshi? Abbess Yin Miao, who knew Lin Ruoshi, was the first to yell. She couldn't believe that Yang Chung would let that person kill his wife. Yang Chung was pleasantly surprised. Oh, Abbess Yin Miao, so you still care about our Ruoshi. I thought it was because of Lin Jigua that you hated Ruoshi to death. Why you still have the mood to say such nonsense? No matter how much I dislike her, she's still a descendant of the Lin family. Abbess Yin Miao was so angry that her face turned red. Yang Chung sighed in his heart. A descendant of the Lin family? That person's background was much deeper than the Lin family. Of course, Yang Chung couldn't say it out loud. Everyone, stop looking. Yang Chung looked left and right before saying to the crowd, hurry up and return to the cruise, or think of a way to run far away. The nuclear bomb might explode later. Everyone present thought that what Yang Chung did just now was because he had a way to stop the nuclear bomb from exploding. Now that they heard it, this guy was actually waiting for the nuclear bomb to explode. Are you kidding? Your Majesty Pluto, why would you kill the Vatican's people when you know that the nuclear bomb will explode? Under everyone's shocked gazes, Yang Chung shrugged. The remote is in that guy's hands. What can I do? As soon as he finished speaking, Panther and the others who were further away, led by the female shaman, quickly retreated out of the island. The weaker members of the organization immediately followed. Lunatic, you really are a lunatic. Even Prince couldn't help but feel afraid. Although Takamagura, the sword in the stone, and the rest were unwilling, they knew that they had to run as far as they could, so they didn't stay any longer. Although the nuclear bomb's area of effect should be very wide, they could only hope that if it really exploded, they would be able to run far enough to avoid it, or at least not die. There was no other way. These people were all experts, so naturally, they had their own ways to leave quickly. In an instant, only Yang Chung, Abbess Yin Miao, Sauron, and the rest were left. Fodessa was still standing straight in front of the monitor. As for his assistants, they had long since disappeared. At this moment, Apollo was already not far from Lin Ruoshi. The unconscious Lin Ruoshi was lying on the ice-cold deck that was slightly higher. Beside her were the stern siblings, and further away were Harry and his mother. When the men in black saw Apollo approaching, they immediately scattered to one side to show their respect. Apollo turned around and sneered at Yang Chung and the rest. Pluto, this is the result of your own stupidity. Such a beautiful woman. Let me burn her to ashes. Then, of course, it will be Deputy Director Fodessa's wife and child. Haha. As he spoke, Apollo once again raised the golden carved longbow, aiming at Lin Ruashi, who was lying a dozen meters away from him. Seeing that Apollo was about to use the bow, Abbess Yun Miao and the rest turned pale. That bow and arrow had been shot from the sea, piercing through two blue storm agents and blowing them into pieces. Lin Ruashi and the rest were ordinary people. If they were shot, not only would they not be ashes, not even dregs would be left. As expected, the men in black who were close to the bow avoided it in a panic, not daring to get too close to that terrifying weapon. The flame arrow once again condensed on the bowstring of the golden longbow. The scorching light scorched the hearts of the people on the island. Except for Yang Cheng, who was standing calmly. Abbess Miao, Sauron, and the rest were anxious. "Goodbye, Persephone. If you want to blame someone, blame your stubborn husband," Apollo said in a low voice and released the flame arrow in his hand. The scorching light burst out in an instant. Chapter 542. Seeing that Apollo had shot the flaming arrow, not only Abbess Yun Miao and the rest, but even Sargeras and Lilith, who hadn't escaped, closed their eyes. From their perspective, this was an unsolvable and tragic ending. For a moment, apart from the cold wind blowing past their ears, there was no other sound on the island. They didn't understand why Yang Cheng would kill the 4 people from the Vatican so carelessly. They also didn't understand how Yang Cheng could be so indifferent as to let the fake Apollo shoot a flaming arrow at Lin Ruashi that no mortal could withstand. But they couldn't bear to see such a beautiful body turn into ashes in front of their eyes. After more than 10 seconds, they forced their eyes open. They didn't hear any sound from the monitor, which made them puzzled. When everyone took a closer look, they were immediately dumbfounded. On the deck, where Lin Ruashi was lying, there was a semi-transparent, golden-red shield around her. A fire-like brilliance flowed on the shield, making it look extremely beautiful. And that powerful, crimson flaming arrow was blocked by the shield. Starting from the arrowhead, it seemed to be swallowed bit by bit. Sparks flew everywhere. It began to dissipate. What is that? Everyone had a huge question in their minds. Why did a shield that could swallow such a terrifying attack suddenly appear? But no matter what, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. When they looked at Yang Cheng's faint smile again, they realized that Yang Cheng must have predicted something, which was why he was so calm. On the deck, Apollo couldn't believe it. He took a step back and shook his head, muttering, "Impossible! How is this possible? What the hell is this?" Apollo was enraged by the sudden change in the situation that was originally under his control. He raised the golden longbow in his hand again and drew another flame arrow. "I don't believe it can't pierce through." An even more ferocious flaming arrow was shot out once again. However, just like before, the moment the flaming arrow came into contact with the golden red flowing light shield, it was completely useless. You can't shoot through it. Although you're very strong and the weapon in your hand is comparable to a divine weapon, you're still not a god. Yang Cheng finally opened his mouth and said with a smile. Apollo spun around, trembling with rage. "What's going on? Tell me what this is." Due to his extreme anger, Apollo's voice was different from before. His roar shocked the haggard Fodessa on the island. "Chief! Chief!" Fodessa cried out in surprise. He stood up abruptly and questioned loudly. "You're the director? You are not Apollo. You're Director Depnay." Apollo's eyes showed a little panic, but more than that, it was anger and ruthlessness. Yang Cheng laughed even more happily and scratched his ear. "Ah, it's Director Depnay. I was wondering why you were pretending to be Apollo. Now, it doesn't matter how loud you speak. Your plan has been exposed." This scene stunned Abbess Yun Miao, Sauron, Sargeras, and the rest. They naturally knew who Depnay was. He was the director of the 7th Bureau of the French Security. Initially, they thought that Fodessa, the deputy director, was hosting the meeting because of the division of labor. Who would have thought that the director was actually Apollo? As if knowing that it was useless to keep up the act, Depnay took off the Roman helmet with the totem of the sun on it and threw it to the side, revealing a face that had gone through the vicissitudes of life. His slightly curly hair drooped down, and his hawk-like eyes were no longer filled with the flattery and arrogance of the past. All that was left was deep hatred and dominance. Fodessa, who had worked with him for many years, almost couldn't be sure of Depney's identity. Director, it's really you. No wonder. No wonder you suddenly asked me to host such an important meeting. So why? Fodessa's heart sank. He realized that he had been tricked by Depney from the start. It was as if the whole world had collapsed. All the energy in his body was sucked out, and he couldn't even ask a complete question. The corner of Depney's mouth twitched. He snorted coldly. Trash. I really shouldn't have raised you up. Talk about the glory of a soldier. You're just a bastard. How dare you talk about glory with me? Humph. Fodessa's eyes were bloodshot, and he didn't say a word. Depney couldn't be bothered with his subordinate. He said darkly, Pluto, I admit that I've underestimated you. I didn't expect you to expose me so quickly. However, this won't affect the final outcome. The detonator is still in my hands. Even if I can't kill your woman right away, I can still blow up the entire island. So, you still have no chance of winning. Yang Chung patted his chest and revealed a frightened expression. He sighed. Director Depney, you're really smart. How could I forget that you still have the detonator? But I'm also stupid. I've long guessed that the so-called Apollo is actually an important member of the French government, but I didn't expect him to be able to control a nuclear bomb. Depney laughed coldly. Oh, you actually had such a guess? I'm interested to hear how you managed to guess such a thing. Anyway, there's no rush to detonate the nuclear bomb. You can treat it as your last words before you die. As he spoke, Depney raised the longbow in his hand. While you're explaining your theory, I'll shoot some arrows as a gift to you. Although I'm not sure what method you use to protect your woman from me, I think, if you die, then she won't have to die. To be honest, it's a pity to kill a woman like her. Laughing maliciously, Depney pulled the bowstring again. Rustle, rustle, rustle. This time, Depney shot 3 arrows in a row. Yang Chung said unhurriedly, Actually, when we were kidnapped to Romilly, I already had my suspicions. In a city so close to Paris, no matter how hidden the warehouse is, it's impossible for the French Security Bureau not to find it after so many rich nobles disappeared. The biggest possibility, I think, is that they don't want to find it at all. As he spoke, 3 flaming arrows fell rapidly from the sky, heading for the 3 people on Sauron's side. Yang Chung didn't look at them. He opened his hand, and surging Sciention true chi rolled back like a raging wave, destroying the terrifying arrows in mid-air. On the other end of the monitor, Depney's face turned green. Although he didn't think his weapon could do much damage to Yang Chung, he had shot it at the others. But he hadn't expected it to be of no threat at all. Yang Chung didn't take it seriously at all. He continued, Moreover, the first target chosen by the so-called Realm of God and the time they launched this operation are also very suspicious. If it really is such a powerful organization, why didn't they choose to deal with a more threatening America and Britain? Wouldn't it be more effective to threaten the American president? If it really was a god, would they need to be afraid of Blue Storm? And the French Security Bureau, as everyone knows, isn't very strong. Picking on a pushover would be a waste of their grand goal of dominating the world. That's why I guess that he chose France, because the fake Apollo could only choose France. And the reason why they waited until now is because in this half a year, the French president will become the rotating chairman of the European Union. At a time like this, the excuse for choosing France is even stronger. It won't make people think that it's because Apollo is in France. Another important point is that the Paris Fashion Week is the time when the world's most famous nobles and merchants gather. If they make trouble at this time, the governments of the various countries won't dare to openly stop their nobles and merchants from coming to France. Other than exerting pressure on the various governments, they can also obtain large amounts of funds to purchase weapons through kidnapping and extortion. At this point, Depney's expression changed unpredictably, and the veins on his forehead bulged. It was obvious that he had guessed correctly. As for Abbess Yin Miao and the others, they gradually understood. No wonder the Security Bureau couldn't do anything about the realm of God's misdeeds in France. So it was embezzlement. Yang Chung sighed. When I saw the weapons in the hands of those men in black, they were actually the most advanced light machine guns from the German HK company. They were all equipped with special forces level equipment, and I was almost certain that the realm of God is an organization that can't be separated from the government. Otherwise, how could these random terrorists have so much money? And their official weapons manufacturers wouldn't easily sell their equipment. I can only say that your plan has some flaws, but it's still very thorough for most people. The flaw is that you overestimated your own strength, and even more so, overestimated the strength of your ally, the Vatican. So what? Depnay shouted. So what if you've guessed correctly now? All of this will sink with the island, forever sinking to the bottom of the sea. When I kill all of you and blow up these idiots from various countries, the world will be in chaos, and every country will be suspicious of each other. When I kill the French president and then kill a few leaders of the European Union will naturally listen to me. Even those people from the sword and the stone won't be able to defeat me, who has a divine weapon. I will become the master of the European Union, ignite the flames of war in the world, and become the master of the world. No one can stop me. Looking at the deranged Depnay, everyone on the island couldn't help but grit their teeth. What a madman. Does he really think that kind of plan will succeed? Lilith said angrily. As a proud member of the blood race, she naturally couldn't accept being played by a human. No, rather than saying that his plan is to rule the world, it's better to say that he wants the whole world to fall into the flames of war, as if he's taking revenge on the humans. Sargeras said softly. Depnay laughed maniacally for a while before he stopped, panting. I can't be bothered to say anything to you people who are about to die. Since I can't kill Pluto's woman for now, I'll kill the others first. Fodessa, my deputy director, I'll send your wife and son to hell to wait for you. No, director, don't kill them. Fodessa roared, climbing onto the monitor and shouting. Depnay couldn't be bothered with him. He turned around, raised his bow again, and aimed at the unconscious Harry and his son, condensing 2 flame arrows. However, just as Depnay was about to shoot the arrows, the unconscious Stern, who had been lying motionlessly on the ground, suddenly scratched his hair and slowly climbed up from the ground. Seeing Stern suddenly wake up, not only were the men in black surprised, but Depnay also frowned. As far as they knew, the drugs on the hostages wouldn't wake them up so quickly. After standing up, Stern didn't forget to stretch. He glanced at Depnay, who was holding the golden bow and pulling the flame arrows, and shook his head, as if lamenting something. Then, he looked at the monitor and said to Yang Chung, Hades, are you done yet? Don't you know that the deck is very cold? Why do you have so much to say? Persephone isn't a non-human like us. Who can a girl cry to when she has a cold? I was wondering why she didn't let you go to bed. You're too wishy-washy and not straightforward at all. Didn't you just tell this pig that he failed? You're done talking. Don't you know that we're rushing back to Paris for supper? Don't you know that the place that sells good food closes after midnight? Yang Chung wasn't surprised to see Stern stand up. He rolled his eyes. Seems like you're the one who talks too much. Seeing that Stern and Yang Chung were chatting, completely disregarding him and treating him like air, Depnay was instantly enraged. Bastard, who do you think you are? You're courting death. As he spoke, Depnay changed the direction of his arrows and shot 2 consecutive arrows at Stern. At such a close distance, 2 flame arrows that could shatter steel plates were unavoidable. Idiot, Stern didn't move, but curled his lips and muttered silently. A golden red shield that radiated light appeared in front of Stern once again, directly swallowing the 2 flame arrows. Don't you understand? The one who stopped your arrows wasn't that guy on the island, but me, your grandfather. Stern looked at Depnay with a gaze full of helplessness. Hearing this, Depnay took 2 steps back. His heart trembled as he realized that something was wrong. He said in a low voice, You're not Stern. Who the hell are you? Stern burst out laughing, almost losing his breath. He pointed at Depnay and shook his head. You want to start a world war with a brain like yours? It's true that you'll die of stupidity without fighting a war. You use my name and use my banner to swindle people everywhere. You should have been mentally prepared to be exposed. Hearing Stern's words, Depnay's mind went blank. His eyes widened and his voice trembled. Finally figured out. Stern stroked his brilliant golden hair and grinned. That's right, I'm a bow. Row. Chapter 543. When Stern finished saying the three words Apollo, not only did Depney's mind go blank, but even Sauron, Abbess Yun Miao, Prince Sargeras, and the others on the island were shocked beyond words. Apollo. This mischievous, undignified scum of the European aristocratic circle, the famous prodigal of the Cromwell family, and the guy who never behaved properly, was the legendary sun god, Apollo, one of the 12 main gods. Seeing everyone's bewildered expressions, Stern, a.k.a. Apollo, expressed his dissatisfaction. He curled his lips and snorted. What's with that look? Why can that ruffian Yang Chung be Pluto, while a handsome aristocrat like me can't be the sun god? I'm the real deal, and I've always been. That guy is the brat who replaced me. Who the F***ck are you calling a ruffian? Who are you calling a ruffian? Did I ever offend you? Yang Chung couldn't help but retort. Oh, right. Apollo chuckled mischievously. I'm wrong. You're a henpecked brat. Yang Chung stomped his foot, and the ground dozens of square meters around him sank into a huge pit. I let you follow my wife, and for the past 2 days, I let you eat and drink for free. It's fine if you didn't thank me, but now you're biting the hand that feeds you and saying bad things about me. Apollo spread his hands and said disdainfully, to put it bluntly, you just wanted us to be Persephone's bodyguards. If it weren't for Persephone's kindness, us siblings wouldn't have listened to your arrangements and played this game. Even if we didn't use this method, we could still find this idiot who pretended to be me in Paris. The people at the side listened to Yang Chun and Stern talking back and forth in an unscrupulous tone. They were all confused, and their faces were all stiff. What was going on? Were these two really gods? Even Prince Sargeras, who had lived for more than 1,000 years, was covered in cold sweat. Lilith, on the other hand, was smiling enchantingly, as if she had seen something very interesting. After recovering from his shock, Depney's face trembled and his eyes filled with venom. How dare you look down on me? Even if you're Apollo, you can't stop me. As he spoke, Depney once again drew the golden longbow in his hand. But this time, even more scarlet flames began to condense, and the blazing flames illuminated the entire deck, as if it were daytime. The surrounding black-clothed people felt the scorching air flow and couldn't help but retreat in panic. Apollo looked at Depney with some pity in his eyes. Do you think that by gathering the most powerful energy with that fake in your hand, you can pose a threat to me? Forget it. I'll let you take a look at the real deal. Consider it a full stop. As he spoke, Apollo turned to the side and raised his left hand. His eyes instantly turned into a bewitching golden red, as if there were flames dancing in his eyes. It was truly demonic. Helios. As soon as he finished speaking, a nearly platinum flame, like a meteor falling from the sky, streaked across the pitch-black night sky and instantly landed on Apollo's left hand. The platinum flame turned into a fire dragon, and after wrapping around Apollo's arm a few times, it stretched out to form a blazing platinum longbow in his left hand. This bow was very similar in shape to the golden longbow in Depney's hand, but this bow was purely made of flames. The entire bow was burning. The high temperature brought by the flames was so high that even the metal near it began to melt. Apollo had set up a protective shield behind him to prevent the high temperature of the flames from spreading to Lin Roashi and the others, so that they wouldn't be harmed. Looking at this platinum flame divine weapon in front of him that made it hard for him to breathe, Depney was scared. This is the real Helios. The one in your hand is just a defective product that the fire god Hephaestus accidentally made when he was forging divine weapons for us gods. At most, it's a demigod weapon. Apollo grinned. I don't know where you got that thing, but it should be from the same place as the sword of Thanatos. But it doesn't matter. In our eyes, these things are nothing more than trash. In front of the monitor, everyone stared at the divine weapon in Apollo's hand, which was glowing with a majestic light. Above the warship, the sky had already been burnt to a pale gold. Sargeras gasped, unable to hide his excitement. Legend has it that the sun god is divided into 3 periods. The first Hephaestus was the original incarnation of the sun, and the second Helios was the sun god who truly drove the sun chariot. Apollo was once thought to be a god confused with Helios. As the third generation of the sun god, the bow he used was named Helios. Could it be? Yang Chung continued. You guessed right. Actually, Hephaestus, Helios, and Apollo are all the same person. It's that guy, just that he's awakened incarnations at different times. Sargeras nodded with a look of realization. So that's how it is. Now it's understandable why there's a change in the gods. Some of the onlookers didn't quite understand what Yang Chung and Sargeras were talking about. After all, no one had lived for thousands of years like Sargeras, so they naturally didn't know much about ancient secrets. But just seeing another god with their own eyes was enough to shock their souls. No wonder you weren't worried about Ruashi being captured. You told Apollo to put on this act from the start. Abbess Yin Miao looked at Yang Chung with a complicated expression. Yang Chung spread his hands. When I was kidnapped with Ruashi and brought to a warehouse in Romilly City, I met the two siblings. I knew who they were. I was puzzled at the time as to why they were pretending to be captured. But after thinking about it carefully, I more or less understood. But according to their plan, even if they could find out who the mastermind was, they wouldn't be able to catch all the fish. So, I let them follow my plan. It took a little longer, but at least they got something out of it. I felt that this method was more accurate to lure the snake out of its hole. Didn't we lure the Vatican out too? Sauron and the rest wiped the sweat off their foreheads. They were quite frightened, but now that they realized that everything was under Yang Cheng's control, they became exceptionally proud. But I didn't expect the Cromwell family's loser siblings to be gods. How unexpected. As Sauron spoke, he suddenly realized something and asked, since His Excellency Stern is Lord Apollo, then Miss Alice is... Yang Chung smiled without saying a word. He pointed at the monitor and let everyone continue watching. At this point, Depney had no way out. His face was ashen, and all the bones in his body felt like they were about to melt. But that last bit of ruthlessness allowed Depney to muster up his last breath. With the thought of putting his life on the line, Depney pulled back the bowstring and roared, "Go!" The arrow, which was condensed with the strongest flame energy, shot straight at Apollo's brow like a laser beam. But such an irresistible arrow froze in mid-air when it was only a centimeter away from Apollo's face. Apollo stuck out his tongue mockingly, then opened his mouth wide and took a gulp. He actually swallowed the flame arrow right into his mouth. Depney watched helplessly as the concentrated flame arrow he had shot out, which was enough to blow up a warship, was swallowed by Apollo's open mouth. Finally, his face turned ashen, and he no longer had the strength to pull back the bowstring. Apollo clicked his tongue. If you were using some other semi-divine weapon, it might be of some use to me, but things like flames are useless against me. As he spoke, Apollo raised the divine bow Helios in his hand, and his right hand began to pull back the arrow. A flame arrow of platinum flames appeared out of thin air, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this arrow was much more terrifying than the arrows Depney had used. Just by forming the arrow, the steel on the warship's deck was already showing signs of melting into molten steel. Ayaya, how do I control this fire? It's still too hot. I have to shoot quickly, Apollo muttered gloomily, and then shot the white flame arrow in his hand. Everyone felt their vision blur. On the monitor screen, there was nothing but flashes of white light, and nothing else could be seen. After a long time, everyone heard a pillar of white light shoot up into the sky from the distant sea. It lit up half the sky and tore the thick night sky into many pieces. Why is it like thunder and lightning? Fodessa, who had been in a state of numbness, finally opened his mouth and said, swallowing his saliva. Everyone else also felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts at this shocking situation. If this happened in human society, wouldn't it be, after a while, the monitor screen finally recovered its image? They had thought that this earth-shattering attack would destroy all the equipment on the warship. But unexpectedly, other than where Depney was standing, no other places on the warship suffered any fatal damage. The white flame arrow just now had miraculously moved vertically and was limited to a small area as it attacked Depney. Such precise control was beyond imagination. However, what was even more unbelievable was that Depney was still alive. Depney's hair was somewhat burnt, and he looked extremely haggard. But he was indeed squatting on the spot unharmed, panting heavily, his face red. Apollo was also slightly taken aback. Looking at the broken object in front of Depney's feet, he came to a realization. So that's how it is. Although that bow is a defective product, it still has divine power infused into it. Just now, it actually sacrificed itself to save you. However, it can also be seen that your body's quality is indeed very special. There was a trace of unwillingness in Depney's eyes, but more than that, it was the fanaticism of someone facing imminent death. Licking his chapped lips, Depney said in a low voice, "Even if I don't survive today, I won't let the people on the island live." With that, Depney suddenly took out the detonation remote control from his pocket, and his finger pressed hard on the red button. At that critical moment, Apollo didn't take any measures, but Depney still couldn't press the button successfully. Bang, bang, bang. From Depney's finger from head to toe, there was a crisp sound of something freezing, extending all the way to Depney's entire body. Under everyone's shocked gazes, for some reason, Depney's entire body was instantly frozen by a layer of solid ice, until Depney was already frozen in a block of icy blue ice, and all his expressions and movements were frozen. Alice, who had been lying down just now, stood up from behind Apollo, her figure swaying. Gently playing with her enviable silver hair, Alice coquettishly rolled her eyes at Apollo. "Dear, do you really have to make me do something like this? Can't you just shoot another arrow, and it'll be over?" Apollo put away the Helios divine bow in his hand, and the bow transformed into a wisp of flame, vanishing in the blink of an eye. "Artemis, my dear sister, you can't blame me for this. Hades, that boring guy, insisted on finding out what secrets Depney was hiding. I thought about it, and the safest way was to let him be frozen by you. If I made a move, it would be troublesome if I killed him or gave him a chance to commit suicide." Apollo put his arm around Alice's shoulder and impatiently kissed the woman's earlobe, as if he was anxious that they hadn't made out in such a short time. The people on the island and the warship were still shocked by the ice that had frozen Depney, when Apollo's words dropped another bomb. "What? Artemis?" Chapter 544. Apart from a few who had no understanding of the system of gods and were puzzled by the ancient name, the rest, including the old men like Prince Sargeras, had their mouths agape, their minds starting to go blank. Apollo alone was enough to make them extremely nervous. Suddenly, the young and beautiful woman in Apollo's arms was the moon goddess, Artemis. Then, this pair of shameful siblings of the Cromwell family were actually a pair of gods. Even though this incomparably dignified form of address had been confirmed, the two parties involved still didn't put on a convincing act. Alice didn't care how surprised the onlookers were. The moment her brother kissed her earlobe, she immediately turned around and wrapped her arms around Stern's neck, kissing him with her cherry lips. For a moment, this pair of strange siblings kissed passionately on the deck of the warship as if no one else was around. Their tongues tangled with each other's moist mouths, and the tisk-tisk sounds became the only clear sound at the moment. Yang Cheng pretended to cough gloomily and said, "Are you guys on steroids? Is it so unbearable again? Can't you guys take a break?" Alice turned around, her charming face flushed with an intoxicating blush. "Hades, it's almost over. Bring the cruise ship Louis XVI over to us. Let's sink this warship." As soon as she said this, the men in black from the realm of gods on the warship were aghast. Their leader, Depney, had already been exposed, and the opponents were two true gods that they were powerless against. It was good enough that they didn't wet their pants in fear. They had thought that the two main gods were being intimate and didn't intend to care about them. Who knew that they would directly sink the ship? Many of the men in black looked terrified. They had seen Apollo's earth-shattering power. How could they have any thoughts of resistance? Their only thought was to immediately board the lifeboats and escape. Alice's beautiful eyes revealed a tinge of dull emotions as she watched the monkeys scatter when the tree fell. Her beautiful silver hair fluttered in the wind. A streak of cold blue flashed across Alice's eyes. The entire destroyer and the waters around it suddenly underwent a drastic change. Starting from the surface of the sea, more than 100 meters away, the originally undulating surface of the sea began to stop and solidify. Amidst the sound of grinding gears, the surface of the sea froze into ice. No one knew where the surging cold air came from, but it caused the entire destroyer to be covered in white mist. Some of the men in black who were about to run to the side of the lifeboats began to chatter, and their bodies stiffened. They could no longer move normally. Starting from their footsteps, the ice and snow had already slowed down their movements. Their muscles and other bodily functions were beginning to be sealed, and they could even feel their blood stop flowing. For a moment, the temperature in this area suddenly dropped from a few degrees above zero to more than 10 degrees below zero, and it was still dropping. Stern had already cast a shield that radiated light in all directions, enveloping Lin Ruoshi, Harry, and his mother behind him to protect them from the extreme cold outside. However, the areas without the shield were already covered by the white frost and ice. After the entire destroyer was frozen by the frozen seawater, the rich water vapor on the ocean had also wrapped the hull in ice. The spreading Xian ice froze the entire warship. At that moment, every black-robed man seemed to have been frozen in time, and there was no longer any movement. Standing in front of the monitor, Sauron, Abbess Yun Miao, Fodessa, and the rest saw with their own eyes that within 10 seconds, the 100-meter-long destroyer and the surrounding waters had actually turned into a huge ice sculpture on the ocean. Freezing certain things was something that some ice ability users could do. However, to be able to create such a magnificent effect in such a short period of time had already far exceeded the scope of ordinary ability users. When everyone looked at the young lady with fluttering silver hair again, their eyes were filled with a deep sense of fear. Artemis, the goddess of the moon and hunt. Shouldn't she have a bow and arrow-type divine weapon like Apollo? Why is she using the power of ice and snow? This seems more like a special ability. Instead, it was the experienced and knowledgeable Prince Sargeras who raised this question with a clear mind. He looked at Yang Chung, who was beside him, with a questioning look. Yang Chung spread out his hands and smiled. Among the gods, there isn't a goddess of ice and snow. Compared to the warmth of the day, the night is cold. Diana, oh, that's another Roman name for Artemis. I didn't know that she could use the power of ice and snow, but it should be like how Apollo represented the sun, yet he could also use the flames of the fire god. It's understandable that Artemis could use ice and snow. Actually, what kind of power is used doesn't mean much. At the end of the day, it's just a different way of using power. Different paths lead to the same goal. After listening, Sargeras nodded thoughtfully. You're right. I've been too focused on the form of power. For you main gods, whether it's fire or ice, there's actually no difference. At the end of the day, they're just the elements in space. Alice, who had completed the freezing project on the destroyer, snorted in dissatisfaction. I do have a bow, but my Selene was accidentally lost in a fight with that crazy woman Athena in the last reincarnation. I haven't found it until now. If I find out who's deliberately hiding it, I'll definitely kill him. Stern hurriedly patted his chest and said, Don't worry, dear. When you find your Selene, I'll work with you to find Athena. Looking at the time, it's about time for her to awaken. This time, the two of us will fight her, and we'll definitely be able to beat her away and avenge you, dear. Come on, when that bitch fought with me, she didn't use a single divine weapon. Even with you, she'd still lose for sure, Alice said weakly. Stern looked embarrassed. He smiled sheepishly and rubbed his nose. He didn't continue the conversation. Listening to the two's nonsense, the people on the island didn't understand what was going on. Yang Chung, on the other hand, was secretly aware that Artemis, like Ares, had designs on the god's stone. Unfortunately, that woman Athena was really powerful to a certain extent. No wonder Kristen thought that only Zeus could fight Athena. It turned out that not only Ares, but other main gods had also fought with her. Wait, Athena? Yang Cheng suddenly thought. Could it be that the mysterious person who took away the god's stone and the divine power of the Holy Grail was Athena? But on second thought, he felt that it was impossible. If it was really Athena, she wouldn't need to hide her strength at all. She was the one who finally won the god's stone. If she hadn't reincarnated, the god's stone wouldn't have fallen into the hands of the previous Pluto. Now that she had awakened, she could just take it away. His strength was only at the same level as Ares. If he really met her, he probably wouldn't be able to fight for it. Why would she be so afraid of him and refuse to show up? She was the goddess of war, who wouldn't even fear Zeus. Moreover, snatching the god's stone was understandable. Why would a god who is already a supreme main god want to snatch the divine power left behind by other ordinary gods? This was completely incomprehensible. No matter how he thought about it, the true identity of the mysterious person was still hard to guess. Yang Cheng even wanted to meet the people of Hongmeng again. Maybe those guys who were detached from the secular world would know something that he didn't know about. Thinking of Hongmeng, Yang Cheng guessed again. Could it be someone from Hongmeng? Or was it someone at the same level as Hongmeng that he didn't know about? There were too many things in his mind. Suddenly, Yang Cheng felt his vision go black. Ugh! Yang Cheng staggered and almost fell to the ground. He hugged his head with both hands and grabbed his scalp tightly, barely managing to stand. Your Majesty, Pluto, what's wrong with you? Is that illness coming back again? A few people in charge of Zero saw Yang Cheng's abnormal behavior and immediately thought of something, so they asked with concern. Yang Cheng waved his hand to show that he was fine. His body was shivering, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. Panting, he said, Maybe it's because I've killed too many people recently, and I didn't pay attention to stimulants like alcohol. I had a little headache just now, but it's not a big problem. Don't worry. Yang Cheng lowered his head. He didn't dare to raise it at this moment, because he knew that his eyes must be scarlet at this moment. Countless crazy thoughts were jumping in his mind. The violent emotions made him want to look up to the sky and roar. Yang Cheng had thought that after cultivating the endless resolve restoration scripture to the 9th level, rebirth, and the innate true chi in his body would reach the great completion realm, he would be able to suppress the chronic illness caused by the divine light in his mind. But he didn't expect that he had still underestimated his enemy. Ever since he had returned from Japan, he had fought with the Brahma people in India, and then fought with that lunatic Ares to unseal himself. Then, when faced with the revenge of the Zheng family, General Lin had killed many people and dealt with one violent incident after another. And his emotional entanglements with Lin Ruoshi and the other girls, as well as his relationship with the Yang family, were all important factors that stimulated his brain. Because he wasn't as careful as when he had just returned, he didn't abstain from alcohol. This time, he had come to Paris for a vacation, but he didn't expect to meet Depnay, the fake Apollo. He fought and killed people, and even used the Revenant's dance that he hadn't used for many years to exchange blows with the six-winged angel of the church. After experiencing all these hot-blooded events, his old illness finally couldn't be suppressed any longer, and it was starting to relapse. Luckily, the endless resolve restoration scripture was already extremely powerful, and he could barely control his brain. It wasn't like before, when he didn't even have the chance to control himself before he went on a killing spree. Only, Yang Cheng wasn't confident that he could suppress it the next time he had a headache. Based on his experience, he knew very well that if something like this happened frequently, it would only get worse each time. Yang Cheng suddenly thought of something. He dug around in his pocket and took out a small medicine bottle. He heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, he still had the special medicine that Jane had made. Even if he knew that the effects of the medicine would diminish with each dose, he still had to take it. After taking out a pill, he immediately swallowed it and circulated his energy to digest it. Only then did Yang Cheng feel that the scarlet in his eyes had faded. Everyone had also noticed Yang Cheng's abnormality, but didn't dare to disturb him. They had been observing quietly. Yang Cheng finally raised his head, revealing a bitter expression. Don't look at me like you're looking at a gorilla, and don't wonder what's wrong with me. I don't want to talk about it. All right, I still have to study Depney's body. Let's return to the cruise, everyone. Chapter 545. Although the nuclear explosion didn't happen on the island as many had expected, the Louis XVI super cruise ship that was docked at the port had left long ago. When Yang Cheng and the rest followed Fodessa and the few special forces and officials who hadn't left the island to the port, they realized the helpless truth. This group of cowards. Nothing happened at all. Why are they running so fast? Lilith supported her father and said angrily with her pink lips pouting. Sargeras chuckled. It's good that they left. His Majesty Pluto scared them so that fewer people would know about the identities of Apollo and Artemis. Yang Cheng turned back and smiled. In the world that humans live in, it's better to have fewer gods appear. After that, he said to Fodessa, Deputy Director Fodessa, although I can cross the ocean even without a ship, my friends can't. You should have a spare ship, right? Fodessa nodded immediately. That's right. We have a spare transport ship. Yana, Your Majesty Pluto, please wait for a moment. I'll personally drive the transport ship out. At this moment, Fodessa had long regarded Yang Cheng as a savior. After all, without Yang Cheng, his entire family would have been finished, and the entire France would have fallen into the hands of that traitor Depnay. Even if Yang Cheng didn't do these things for him and his country, it didn't affect Fodessa's gratitude. While Fodessa was driving the ship, Sauron held the sword of Thanatos in the black box and walked up to him. Your Majesty Pluto, how do you plan to deal with this sword? Yang Cheng looked at it with a complicated expression. He thought that the mysterious person would come and take the sword, but there wasn't even a shadow of him. He waved his hand and said, You take it. When we return to Paris, let the sea eagles transport it back to the Forgotten Realms. Ask Ron to keep it for me. It's just an ordinary artifact. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to do anything even if they took it. It's useless for me to take it. Sauron was stunned. Your Excellency, aren't you going back there to take a look? Yang Cheng chuckled and said with some regret, I won't be going back this time. After all, I'm accompanying my wife to attend Paris Fashion Week. I have to go back to Huaxia after it's over. I can't waste any time. Besides, Huaxia still has a lot of things to deal with. It's not convenient for me to be away for too long. Old Master Tang's illness, his headache needed Jane to check and treat. Choi Yun wanted him to bring her back to Beijing. Mad Dragon's reserve team training was coming to an end. Moreover, Guo Xiuhua, Mother Wang, and other family members were waiting for them to return. Yang Cheng didn't think that under such circumstances, Anshin would choose to visit his old friends. Sauron and the others were slightly disappointed, but they respected Yang Cheng's decision. 10 minutes later, Fodessa personally drove a transport ship to the port to pick up everyone. Then, they headed towards the direction of the destroyer. When they were a few hundred meters away from the frozen sea, everyone felt a bone-piercing chill. The pure white snow was like a huge ice floe in the North Pole, drifting to this area of the sea. The image on the monitor was already shocking enough. Now that they were seeing it with their own eyes, they couldn't imagine what kind of method was used to create such a deadly ice domain. You guys don't have to go over. I'll be back immediately after I'm done. Yang Cheng also knew that the people on the ship wouldn't be able to withstand the temperature there, so he jumped off the deck and landed on the sea. The group only saw Yang Cheng rise and fall a few times on the surface of the sea, as if the sea had become flat ground. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. On the destroyer that was already an ice ship, Yang Cheng's figure flashed and landed in front of Stern and Alice. The affectionate siblings were cuddling with each other. The bitter cold outside naturally had no effect on them. As for Lin Ruashi and Harry, they were still lying inside the shield like before. As for Depnay, who was frozen in ice, he maintained his previous posture, not moving an inch. Yang Cheng circled around Depney's body, as if carefully observing something. Hades, I really don't understand. What's there to study about this old man that made us wait for so long? Stern said, curling his lips. Yang Cheng glanced at him. Aren't you curious? Even if the bow in his hand is a defective divine weapon, it's still a divine weapon. Any human expert, even the world's top secret agent, wouldn't be able to bring out the true power of a divine weapon when wielding it. But Depney really did bring out the power of a divine weapon. Relying on that bow, he took 3 military bases by surprise. Although he might be bluffing, there's no doubt that he has the ability to control this ordinary divine weapon. Stern and Alice frowned. Although they knew that there was something fishy about this, they hadn't thought too much about it. Yang Chung stood in front of Depney and said, "Look carefully. Even if this guy is frozen in ice that's tens of degrees below zero, his blood is still flowing. This has already completely surpassed the limits of a human." As he spoke, Yang Chung touched the ice with one hand and infused some vital energy into it. Bang, bang, bang. After a series of crisp sounds, the ice around Depney shattered and scattered all over the ground. Indeed, just as Yang Chung had said, when the ice shattered, Depney didn't freeze. Instead, he sat down on the ground, panting with sweat all over his body. Yeah, looks like this idiot's constitution really isn't ordinary. Alice knew best how cold the ice she'd frozen was. Humans couldn't possibly withstand it. Yang Chung smiled evilly and crouched down to stare at Depney. "Tell me your true background. You're definitely not an idiot impersonating Apollo. How did your body become like this? How did you learn about the gods? How did you get the 2 divine weapons? Tell me, and I'll let you die a quick death." Yang Cheng's meaning was clear. No matter what, you had to die. The only difference was whether it was a comfortable death or a painful one. Depney's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He picked up the detonator in his hand and was about to press it when he suddenly realized that even if he detonated the nuclear bomb, it would be meaningless because there was no one on the island. Involuntarily, Depney angrily smashed the detonator into smithereens. Yang Chung wasn't in a hurry. Looking at Depney, gasping for air with his head lowered, he had a card up his sleeve. After a long while, Depney finally said in a low, hoarse voice, "It's divine light." Yang Cheng's mind was in turmoil. He never would have thought that it would actually be that reason. Divine light. You've been shown on by divine light before. Yang Cheng couldn't help but feel a little excited. Depney sneered. "What? You don't believe me?" Yang Chung thought for a moment. "Continue. It's up to me whether I believe you or not. More than 30 years ago, I was in an underground research base in Madagascar. Together with many young people of the same age, I was captured to participate in a live experiment. I think Pluto is well aware of the organization that conducted the experiment," Depney said. Zero. Yang Chun naturally knew who she was, because he was one of the human subjects who had been experimented on. It was Zero who had used the God Stone to modify his body. It was also because of the God Stone that he had enough capital to become a god. It was also because of the God Stone that the tragedy of the past years had occurred. A large part of the reason why Yang Chung had personally destroyed Zero back then was because he hated everything Zero had done to him, and he had established a new Zero just to stabilize the order of the assassin world. There were no more live experiment projects. Depney continued. Actually, that experiment was a failure. At the time, I thought I was already dead. In fact, those mad scientists who did the experiment thought I was dead too. I don't know if it was because they made a mistake or if something went wrong in some part of the experiment. Perhaps it was because there was a small deviation at the very edge where I was arranged to receive the divine light. In the end, I crawled out of the pile of corpses. The story that Depney told was actually very simple. When he was young, this man had been exposed to the same divine light as Yang Chung. However, there had been an anomaly in the experiment. Although he didn't have the endless resolve restoration scripture as a life-saving secret like Yang Chung, he had still survived. Even though the experiment hadn't been completed, Depney, who had survived, discovered that his body was much, much stronger than that of an ordinary human. At the time, Depney had harbored hatred in his heart and had always wanted to return to that base for revenge. However, after he had successfully risen to become the leader of the French Security Bureau, he had heard the news that Zero had already been destroyed. With complicated feelings, he once again returned to one of Zero's bases that had been destroyed by Yang Chung, wanting to confirm if it was true. Unexpectedly, he had discovered a secret room that had been exposed due to a landslide. In that secret room, Depney had found some documents regarding the gods, as well as the longbow and the sword of Thanatos. What happened next was just as Yang Cheng had deduced. After Depnay obtained the divine artifact, his ambition swelled, causing him to privately create the realm of gods. Using the name of the gods, he took a risk out of desperation, thinking of controlling the political scene of the European Union and other countries. Depnay had been worried about whether or not he would be obstructed by the gods, but he was blinded by profit. Moreover, with the divine artifact in hand, especially after successfully destroying the first military base, his confidence swelled, and he couldn't care less about anything else. After hearing Depney's words, Yang Cheng frowned. It wasn't that he doubted the veracity of Depney's words. When a man was about to die, his words were always kind. However, since an example like Depney had appeared, could there be other people in the world who had also survived the divine light? There weren't many kung fu like the endless resolve restoration scripture, but it definitely wasn't the only one in the world. If other people also had life-saving methods and were lucky enough to survive the divine light, could they have also obtained special powers? From the fact that Depney could use the divine artifact, even though he had only been illuminated by the divine light once and hadn't completely succeeded, it could be seen how powerful the power of the God Stone was. Yang Cheng even began to suspect that the mysterious person who had stolen the God Stone and the divine power of the Holy Grail might have been like him, a fellow who had been illuminated by the divine light, and not a god. Pondering these questions, Yang Cheng turned around and looked at Stern Alice. Stern understood Yang Cheng's doubts and shrugged, saying directly, "There's no need to ask us. We don't fully understand the use of the God Stone. Otherwise, the first-generation Hades wouldn't have done so many experiments." Yang Cheng turned around and smiled at Depney. "Thank you. I'll send you on your way." Can't you let me go?" Depney pleaded with a pained expression. Yang Cheng didn't say anything else. Raising his hand, he channeled his true energy into his palm and slammed it down. Even if Depney had been illuminated by the divine light and had an extraordinary physique, he was still just a body of flesh and blood. How could he withstand it? In the blink of an eye, Yang Cheng looked down at the headless corpse and shook off the stains on his hands. He wasn't in a good mood, because after asking, there were even more questions. But just as he was feeling gloomy, Yang Cheng turned around and discovered something even more ominous. Lin Ruashi had actually woken up? Chapter 546. Perhaps it was because the sound was too loud, or the effects of the drug had worn off, or perhaps it was because the time had indeed dragged on for too long. In short, Lin Ruashi did not wake up earlier or later. She just had to wake up at this moment when Yang Cheng was killing people with a shield of flowing light over her head and a sea of ice and snow all around her. She woke up. Furthermore, from Lin Ruashi's unconcealable expression of panic, agitation, confusion, pain, and all sorts of other indescribable emotions, Yang Cheng guessed that this woman might have actually woken up earlier. "Huh, you're awake?" Yang Cheng suddenly realized that he had spoken nonsense. Lin Ruashi stared deeply for a moment, and all the emotions that she had revealed just now disappeared, as if they had never appeared. The woman did not speak, but carefully looked at the shield of flowing light that enveloped her body. Perhaps it was because of the cold, or perhaps it was because of fear. Lin Ruashi shivered and shrank her body. Like a delicate flower in a world of ice and snow, she did not fit in with the outside world. Stern and Alice looked at each other and saw the gloating expression in each other's eyes. They knew very well that although everything that had happened was within Yang Cheng's grasp, he had been hiding it from Lin Ruashi. Yang Cheng could not be bothered with this pair of unscrupulous siblings. He scratched the back of his head and thought about how to communicate with Lin Ruashi. Originally, when he came up with his plan of loosening the reins only to grasp them better, Yang Cheng had also considered whether Lin Ruashi would see some of the secrets that he had been hiding. But after thinking about it, he had to confess sooner or later, so he did not hesitate much and arranged this series of things. But facing Lin Ruashi in such a special environment, Yang Cheng was still a little nervous. He took a few deep breaths and stabilized his emotions. Seeing that Lin Ruashi just sat on the deck without saying a word, Yang Cheng thought that she was afraid. After all, she was a girl. No matter how strong her mental fortitude was, it was rare for her not to faint after seeing such an extraordinary scene and listening to a conversation that seemed to belong to another world. Don't worry, it's all in the past. Come, I'll take you back to the ship. We'll be back at the hotel tonight. Yang Chung walked up to Lin Ruoshi and stretched out his hand. Stern shield had no effect on him. Yang Chung held Lin Ruoshi's ice-cold hand and injected a stream of true qi into it to resist the cold outside that was dozens of degrees below zero. Lin Ruoshi didn't have any resistance or emotions. She was surprisingly obedient. In the past, when she brushed against Yang Chung, she would blush or avoid him. But at this moment, she was like a Barbie doll that was under Yang Cheng's control. She held hands when she said she would, got up when she said she would, and left when she said she would, without saying a word. Her eyes were very calm. Her face was also devoid of emotion, and she didn't say a single word. The woman, who was originally like an iceberg, was now standing on a ship full of ice and snow. She was more like a beautiful ice sculpture, without any impurities of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, bright and transparent. Yang Chung finally realized that the situation was much more subtle than he had imagined. A little irritation emerged in his heart. Everything in front of him was too different from what he had imagined. Even if Lin Ruoshi gave him a tight slap, Yang Chung wouldn't dodge. Even if Lin Ruoshi glared at him and cursed him coldly, Yang Chung would gladly endure it. However, Lin Ruoshi's complete silence made Yang Chung very uncomfortable. What exactly went wrong? Yang Chung couldn't figure it out, so he could only put it aside and take Lin Ruoshi, Harry, and his mother away. Of course, Yang Chung was only responsible for taking Lin Ruoshi away. Little Harry and his mother were taken back to the ship by the Stern siblings. He had no intention of letting the siblings, who were watching the show, slack off. Everything on the return trip seemed to be very smooth. Other than on the ship, everyone looked at the Stern siblings strangely. No one said much. Instead, the main people in charge of Sea Eagles and Zero who came with Soren introduced their identities in society to Lin Ruoshi one by one and took the initiative to pledge loyalty to Lin Ruoshi, which made the ship a little more lively. However, Lin Ruoshi seemed very numb. She listened to these people talk in a daze and said a bunch of titles that would attract the envy of the European upper class. In addition to being at a loss, there seemed to be some panic in her eyes. Yang Chung stood next to her and frowned. He thought that Lin Ruoshi was having a hard time accepting so many things that she hadn't thought of, so he didn't disturb her. He thought that when they arrived in Paris and rested for a night, Lin Ruoshi would naturally recover. Yang Chung couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would have given Lin Ruoshi a heads up, and she wouldn't have made a fuss like a pitiful little girl who didn't even dare to speak. Compared to the vigorous and valiant strong woman in the past, the current Lin Ruoshi had empty eyes and no aura to speak. She was more like a little sheep huddled in the corner, which made Yang Chung feel uncomfortable. After returning to the port of Le Havre, Yang Chung took Lin Ruoshi to the place where he parked his Maybach. He let the limp Lin Ruoshi sit in the car first and made the seat more level. He then started the car and turned on the heater to prevent her from getting frightened and catching a cold. The sea breeze outside was extraordinarily damp and cold. "Wife, rest for a while. I'll be back soon and bring you back to the hotel," Yang Chung said to Lin Ruoshi with a smile, regardless of whether Lin Ruoshi was listening to him or not. After settling Lin Ruoshi down, Yang Chung walked back to the port. Of the hundreds of people who had escaped with Louis XVI earlier, a group had already dispersed, but there was still a group left. Because Stern and Alice's identities weren't going to be made public, they only took action this time with Depney pretending to be Apollo and Yang Chung participating. It was equivalent to the 3 of them playing a game. Fodessa and the others who had witnessed everything naturally didn't have the guts to tell the truth. They simply recounted Depney's crimes and gave all the credit to Yang Chung. This couldn't be helped. Other than Yang Chung, no one else would believe that the matter could be resolved so easily. However, Yang Chung wasn't too worried. With so many people knowing his identity, it wouldn't bring him trouble. These organizations weren't stupid, and no one would risk offending the gods by spreading the news of Yang Cheng's real identity and whereabouts. To put it bluntly, these people couldn't wait for the gods' identities to be proven. The existence of gods would only affect the stability of the country's political regimes, and religions would grow wildly. This was something the people in charge didn't want to see. Just like when he returned to Huaxia, the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade wouldn't casually reveal his identity, even if they knew he had a divine position. Therefore, even if everyone knew the identities of Yang Cheng and the other two, they wouldn't spread it. In a world ruled by humans, if the gods were willing to remain silent, that would be the best cooperation. Hence, Stern and Alice continued to play the role of rescued hostages. Sauron, Abbess Yun Miao, Sargeras, and the others were all witnesses. The matter was more or less settled. The remaining trivial matters could be settled by a meeting between the governments, and the organizations at the port quickly dispersed. Takamagura, the Sword and the Stone, and the other organizations stayed until the end. The Sword and the Stone and the others' attitude towards Yang Cheng had clearly improved. After all, they were only able to survive because of Yang Cheng's kindness. The Takamagara group also said their goodbyes, which was already a great show of respect for them. As for the Sword of Thanatos in Sauron's hands, although many people coveted it, they didn't have the guts to pull a tooth out of Yang Cheng's tiger mouth. Even if Yang Cheng didn't think much of the sword. Your Majesty Pluto, do we really not need to take this divine weapon away? Sauron held the black box and hesitated. He still consulted Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng patted his old friend's shoulder. You guys can take it away. Just send it to Ron and leave it there. This sword isn't of much use to me. I thought someone would come to snatch it, but it seems like I guessed wrong. It's just an extra item with me, and it's troublesome to carry it. Sauron nodded and didn't say anything else. After saluting Yang Cheng, he left with the others. Fodessa and the other French officials had mixed feelings when they saw their belongings being taken away just like that. However, they didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. Fortunately, the realm of gods was gone, and the crisis between the president and the European Union was over, so they didn't lose much. At this moment, Sargeras and Lilith came forward. Sargeras and Lilith bowed slightly and smiled. This time, it's all thanks to Your Majesty Pluto. If you're willing to stay for a few more days, I'd like to invite Your Majesty Pluto to my castle so that we can be a good host. Yang Cheng hurriedly waved his hand. Forget it. I'm not interested in that old house of yours that you've lived in for thousands of years. On the other hand, you've been pierced by Longina's spear, so you should go back and recuperate. If the patriarch of the Vangel clan falls, the Camarilla will be in chaos. Sargeras was a little embarrassed. It's fine. Although Longina's spear is lethal, with Your Majesty Pluto's help, my body can still withstand it. Lilith's beautiful blue eyes were full of splendor. No one knew what she was thinking, but her face was a little shy. However, she didn't say anything. Stern and his sister were already impatient. They hugged and kissed for a while. Seeing that Yang Cheng was still chatting, Stern couldn't help but wave his hand. I say, Mr. Yang, we're still waiting for your car to go back to Paris. Can you hurry up? It's so cold outside. The rest of the crowd despised them from the bottom of their hearts. These two were really good at pretending. Do you even know cold? Yang Cheng was about to tease the siblings, but his mind suddenly flashed with alertness. *T. By the time he realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. Just over 100 meters away, Sauron's group was returning to their parking spot. Unexpectedly, beside Sauron, who was walking at the front, there was a sudden fluctuation in the space. Sauron didn't have any reaction at all. Suddenly, he felt the box in his arms disappear. Ping, ping. The crisp sound of metal rang out. The Sword of Thanatos, which had lost its black box, fell to the ground. The figures of Yang Cheng, Stern, and Alice appeared in front of Sauron almost at the moment when the Sword of Thanatos fell, giving Sauron and the rest a big shock. It's still too late, Yang Cheng finished mumbling. Other than a bitter smile, there was nothing else he could do. He had thought that he had miscalculated this time, and that the mysterious man wouldn't snatch the Sword of Thanatos. However, he didn't expect that it wasn't that the guy didn't want to snatch it, but that he chose to make a move when there were fewer people. Everyone's guard was down, and they thought that he wouldn't appear, but they immediately made a move. Looking down at the sword of Thanatos, which had obviously been drained of all its divine power, or rather, it should be called an ordinary metal sword, Yang Cheng's fists were clenched tightly. Chapter 547. Shattering Space and Stripping Away Divine Power. It's exactly the same as what you described. Stern and Alice's expressions were also grave. Alice's eyes, which were full of coquettishness earlier, were now filled with coldness. She said in a low voice, "Moreover, from the way he performed it, it's definitely at the level of a main god, or even higher. Stripping divine power can't be done so quickly if it wasn't for the huge gap in divinity. At the very least, I can't do it so quickly. Damn it, we didn't realize it until he made his move. The problem is, what's the use of stripping divine power? Why doesn't he want the artifact and only wants the divine power on it?" Yang Cheng had always been puzzled by this. Stern shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. He gritted his teeth and said, "What's worse is that he did it in front of the three of us. It's obvious that he doesn't care about us." When this happened, the expressions of the brother and sister who were laughing and joking also darkened. He stared blankly at the item in his hand, disappearing just like that, and the sword of Thanatos falling to the ground. Only then did he realize that it was the mysterious person that Yang Cheng mentioned before. He felt a lingering fear. If the mysterious person didn't want the divine power on the sword but wanted to kill them instead, wouldn't they have disappeared just like the black box without anyone knowing? Your Majesty Pluto, what do we do now?" Even though Sauron had been through hundreds of battles, his voice still sounded strange. Yang Cheng naturally wasn't in a good mood after being fooled again. He said casually, "Do whatever you want. You can throw the sword away or bring it back. It's an ordinary item anyway." After saying that, Yang Cheng went straight back to where he parked his car. Stern and Alice took a deep look at the sword of Thanatos on the ground and left as well. None of them said a word, but it was obvious that they were all holding back their anger. The crowd at the port looked at the backs of the three leaving, and no one dared to say anything. Fodessa wanted to thank Yang Cheng for saving his wife and son, but he swallowed his words. When he returned to the car, Yang Cheng found that Lin Ruoshi was the same as when she left. She sat there and stared blankly out the window without moving. If it was any other day, Yang Cheng would definitely think of something to make the woman happy. Even if she rolled her eyes at him, it wouldn't be a bad thing. But now, Yang Cheng wasn't in the mood at all. After the siblings got into the car, he immediately drove back to Paris. A few hours later, in the wee hours of the morning, the car stopped outside the Sofitel Hotel. Yang Cheng had been reciting the cultivation method of the endless resolve restoration scripture along the way. Finally, he managed to suppress his impetuous mood and returned to normal. Just as he was about to get off the car to open the door for Lin Ruoshi, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, to please her, Lin Ruoshi took the initiative to get off the car this time and walk back to the hotel in silence. Looks like your woman is angry. Congratulations, Hades." Stern moved closer to Yang Cheng and said with a smile. Alice, who was hanging on her brother's body, also giggled. The siblings had also returned to their usual casual behavior. After getting off the car, they kissed each other and went back to their place. What is going on? Those clowns were defeated, but the most important thing was that they failed to defend against the mysterious man. What's worse was that Lin Ruoshi discovered more of his secrets and seemed to be treating him coldly. Why is this happening? Yang Cheng was puzzled. Even if she is angry with me, she should at least give me an explanation and a chance to speak. Yang Cheng rubbed his hair painfully. Looking at Lin Ruoshi's delicate back as she walked away, he really wanted to smash the Maybach next to him with his fist. Sofitel Hotel, in a certain business suite. Under the dim light, Goodman, who was wearing white pajamas, was holding a crystal glass filled with dry red wine. He was walking in circles on the carpet barefooted. The speaker at the bedside was playing a waltz composed by Schubert. It was lively and pleasant. Ever since he kidnapped Lin Ruoshi and the others and handed them over to the realm of God, Goodman had never felt so carefree. Thinking that after tonight, Lin Ruoshi and Yulei International would become a fat piece of meat in his mouth. Goodman didn't have the mood to sleep at all. He simply asked for a few bottles of 20-year-old Lafite in his room and danced while waiting for the good news the next day. Your dancing skills aren't that great. A faint male voice suddenly appeared on the balcony, causing Goodman to be startled. Who is it? Goodman turned around abruptly. The curtains of the French glass door fluttered in the wind, revealing the silhouette outside. Yang Chung. Goodman lost his grip on the wine glass and dropped it on the floor, staining the floor red. He pointed at Yang Chung and said with a trembling voice, How did you? Yang Chung pushed open the glass door expressionlessly and walked to Goodman. Without saying anything, he grabbed Goodman's waist and flipped him over. Goodman's body was like a toy. After being flipped over by Yang Chung held one of his legs and hung it in the air. What are you doing? Goodman's blood was flowing all over his body, making it difficult for him to speak. He couldn't understand why the supposedly dead Yang Chung would appear outside his room. Since Yang Chung had returned alive, where was Lin Ruoshi? Where was his beautiful dream? The scene in front of him made Goodman feel like he had fallen from the clouds to hell. He didn't even have the time to think about what Yang Chung wanted to do. Yang Chung didn't waste any time. Lifting Goodman's body as if he was carrying an insignificant object, he moved and jumped off the balcony. Pulling Goodman's leg, he jumped down from the 10-story hotel. Goodman was stunned by Yang Cheng's crazy jump. As he was hanging upside down, he could only see the ground getting closer and closer to him. Goodman's eyes rolled back as he fainted from the shock. A few minutes later, Goodman felt a warm liquid flowing on his face and a disgusting stench. He couldn't help but wake up drowsily. In front of him were all sorts of psychedelic red lights, bright and dark, intertwined with each other as several figures swayed in front of him. Hey, white pig, you're finally awake? Haha, you're so white. Your skin is almost as white as a woman's. A few rough laughs rang in Goodman's ears. Goodman felt a chill run down his spine. His dazed emotions immediately disappeared. He realized that he was actually naked. Where's this? Who are these people? What happened to me? Goodman subconsciously touched the liquid on his face. After taking a careful sniff, he almost fainted again. It's actually urine. Haha, look, this white pig is still smelling my urine. Another person laughed. What a pig. But since it's free, let it be a little dirty. Another person said reluctantly. Goodman finally saw the scene in front of him clearly. His face almost turned green. He was actually lying on the floor of a place that was obviously a nightclub. Surrounding him was a group of muscular black men. These black men were wearing fancy clothes that were usually worn in nightclubs. It was obvious that they were here for some special performances. Naturally, their lives belonged to the category of debauchery. At this very moment, he, who was supposed to be the descendant of a noble and the director of a multinational company, was actually stripped naked by these black men who he viewed as filthy bugs. Goodman didn't even need to use his toes to figure out that it was Yang Chun who had thrown him here. Before Goodman could explain himself and ask the group of men to let him go, they had already flipped him over and were about to do something that would make Goodman wish he was dead. You guys, listen to me. I can. Goodman wanted to say that he could give these black men a lot of money so that they wouldn't do such horrible things to him. Unfortunately, Goodman's current condition didn't make the black men think that he was someone that could be forgiven with money. Just as Goodman was about to say something, a stinky thing that could carry on the family line had already stuffed his mouth full. Once upon a time, Goodman had only done such things to women who were greedy for his money. He had never imagined that there would be a day when he would have to do such a service for a black man. The thing that was stuck to his throat made Goodman's tears flow out. He was almost out of breath. However, the painful thing had just begun. Just as Goodman was about to get rid of the thing in his mouth, he felt a pair of strong arms grabbing his lower body. Then, a burning hot thing was already approaching his buttocks. Shrill screams came from the neon lights of the house, but in the hustle and bustle of the sleepless street district, it was not worth mentioning. This area was the location of the famous Moulin Rouge. In the Montmartre area, There were all sorts of pubs, dance clubs, casinos, and shady businesses, making the night here seem especially flirtatious. Yang Chung was sitting alone on the roof of this brothel. He was holding a bottle of Martell in his hand. Hearing Goodman's shrieks of begging for death, Yang Chung poured another mouthful of wine into his mouth expressionlessly. Naturally, Goodman's punishment wouldn't end so easily. However, Yang Chung didn't get much excitement from his revenge. Whenever he thought about Lin Ruoshi's cold attitude toward him, Yang Chung felt that it would be meaningless even if he had 100 Goodmans to vent his anger on. Even though Yang Chung knew that he couldn't drink alcohol anymore, he couldn't stop himself from gulping it down. After nearly 2 hours, the back door of the house opened. A man covered in scars and bruises, with some of his private parts bleeding and swollen, was thrown out. The man's appearance caused many people on the street to run away in panic. Even though this area wasn't safe, it was rare to see such a pitiful fellow. If it was possible, Goodman really wanted to die. However, after 2 hours of torment, Goodman's entire body was in pain. His throat was hoarse from all the crying, and he didn't even have the strength to bite his tongue to commit suicide. The intense pain in his buttocks made Goodman so ashamed that he wanted to die. "You're not dead yet?" Yang Chun leaped down from the roof and walked towards Goodman. Looking down at him, he looked at him emotionlessly. Goodman thought that he didn't care about death anymore. If he didn't even have the last bit of dignity as a man, what was the point of living? However, when he saw Yang Chen's pitch-black eyes, Goodman finally realized that his death wasn't as simple as it seemed. Chapter 548. What do you want? Goodman's face was covered in filth, and his face was swollen. He looked as miserable as he could be. Even a homeless man on the street would look better than Goodman. Yang Chun casually threw away the empty bottle of Martell, then took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. He didn't reply, and only puffed out smoke rings from time to time. Although there weren't many people on the street, because it was the back door of the theater, Goodman's ugly appearance still attracted the attention of others. Goodman had never been humiliated like this since he was young. Not only was his pride and the sense of superiority brought by his noble bloodline shattered, he didn't even have the courage to resist the man before him. This was the perfect time to say that living was worse than death. Mr. Yang, I know I'm wrong. Please let me go. I'll give you all my assets. I won't dare to have any improper thoughts anymore." Goodman wanted to cry, but no tears came out. His tears had already dried up when he was gang-raped by the black men. What dignity? What pride? Those were all bullsh**t. Goodman's intestines were rotting with regret. His greed and evil thoughts had actually brought about such a disastrous outcome. Yang Chung finally spoke. If a person can atone for his mistakes with money, then it's not illegal for the rich to kill the poor, right? Goodman choked on his words, not knowing what to say. Yang Chung waved his hand, signaling Goodman to stop begging. "How about this? I'm in a bad mood right now. If you can perform something for me and survive, I won't kill you." Perform something? Goodman swallowed his saliva and asked carefully, "May I know what it is? Don't tell me he's going to aim a gun at my head. No matter how good my performance is, won't I still die?" Yang Chung was expressionless as he said, "Bungee jumping." Goodman was stunned. Bungee jumping? Although he had never done such an extreme sport, Goodman knew that bungee jumping only looked thrilling and dangerous. But how many people would actually get into an accident because of it? Even if he was afraid of falling from a high altitude, bungee jumping was nothing in order to survive. Goodman didn't doubt that Yang Chung would kill him. Judging from the fact that Yang Chung could return to the hotel safely, it was obvious that Yang Chung was much more powerful than the realm of gods. "Do you agree?" Yang Chung asked. Goodman nodded furiously. "Yes, agree. I'll do it as many times as you want." Yang Chung pinched the cigarette and threw it into the ditch by the roadside. Then he grabbed one of Goodman's legs. Just like before, he dragged Goodman upside down and left in a flash. A few passers-by thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. There were clearly two figures there. How could they suddenly disappear? Goodman was even more dizzy as he was lifted up and down. Looking at the distance between his head and the ground getting closer and closer, Goodman's heart couldn't take it anymore. He even fainted at one point. The bright lights of Paris, the Arc de Triomphe, the Louvre, the Place de la Concorde, the Champs-Élysées. Looking down at the fashion capital of the world from above, one would unwittingly be mesmerized. The cold wind blew at Yang Chen's long hair, causing his shirt to stick tightly to his body, outlining the outline of his well-defined muscles. Beneath Yang Cheng's feet, Goodman, who was completely naked, felt an unprecedented chill. He finally woke up from his coma. Feeling as though he was surrounded by cold, hard metal, Goodman looked around in a daze. However, this glance immediately caused him to scream in shock. Goodman suddenly realized that he could see the night view of the entire Paris city center from where he was lying. The entire building was made of pure metal. Having been in France for so many years, Goodman could easily tell that this was the Eiffel Tower. Tourists from all over the world would come to visit this hollow tower in the Place de la Concorde. It wasn't that Goodman hadn't been here before. In fact, he had been here countless times. The problem was that he had never laid on the top of the Eiffel Tower naked before. For ordinary tourists, they could only go up to the first floor of the tower. Going further up, not only would the tickets be expensive, it would also be equivalent to going up a skyscraper. However, that kind of tour was always inside the tower. Who would have thought that he would fall from the top of the 300-meter-tall tower if he wasn't careful? Goodman felt that the blood in his body was about to freeze. His body couldn't stop trembling. It wasn't just the temperature, but also the fear and panic that emanated from the bottom of his heart. Mr. Yang, Goodman was almost crying as he said, "Why did you bring me here? Didn't you say bungee jumping?" Goodman couldn't figure out how Yang Chun managed to reach the top of the Iron Tower. There weren't any means of transportation here, and the Iron Tower wasn't receiving guests anymore. Could it be that Yang Chun dragged him up the 300-meter-tall Iron Tower by himself? That was indeed the case. To Yang Chun, reaching the top of the Eiffel Tower was just a matter of seconds. Lowering his head to glance at Goodman, Yang Chun said, "That's right. It's bungee jumping. From here." Goodman was dumbfounded. Bungee jumping from the Eiffel Tower, and from the top of the 300-meter-tall tower. Not to mention that the structure of the tower was narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. It was impossible for bungee jumping. There wasn't even any equipment here. Wouldn't jumping be a dead end? Why? You're not jumping? Don't you remember that you promised? Yang Cheng lowered his head and looked at him expressionlessly. Goodman's face was stiff. Using his remaining strength, he begged, "Mr. Yang, there isn't any equipment here. Even if you want me to bungee jump from here, you need a rope to tie me up. Otherwise, it's basically suicide." Yang Cheng shrugged. "I only asked you to bungee jump. I didn't say that I would tie you up with a rope. You've already promised to show me something. You can't go back on your words. Go down." Goodman opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Yang Cheng's foot had already landed on his waist. His scream tore through the sky, but it was still blown away by the wind. Just like that, the man fell from the top of the Eiffel Tower. His body collided, twisted, broke, deformed, and scraped against the metal structure of the tower. Fresh blood dyed the tower red, but it was quickly dried up by the wind. Yang Cheng didn't look at Goodman's current state. If it wasn't for his bad mood, he wouldn't have bothered to torture Goodman to death. Yang Cheng didn't feel good about this kind of torture either. The swelling pain in his head was the best proof. However, Yang Cheng didn't regret it. He had reminded Goodman before, but the latter still chose to betray him. In that case, falling naked from the top of the Eiffel Tower was the best way to bid him farewell. When the sun rose, the Frenchman would find this miserable corpse. But the police couldn't really investigate anything, because when they found out that it was related to them, they would give up the investigation. The French police and the Security Bureau were now under Fodessa's control. As for who would take over the director position of ULA International in Europe after Goodman's death, Yang Cheng didn't care. Lin Ruoxi would always be able to come up with a reasonable arrangement. Thinking of Lin Ruoxi, Yang Cheng's headache intensified. The sense of satisfaction he felt after killing Goodman immediately vanished. After being exposed to the cold wind for a while, Yang Cheng returned to his hotel room like a shadow. Just as he entered the room, He happened to see his phone on the bedside table ringing. It was already midnight in France, but it was still noon in Huaxia. Yang Cheng didn't find it strange that someone was calling. He picked up the phone and saw that it was from Mo Chinny. Before he came to France, he had stayed in Mo Chinny's room with Xiang Wei. The three of them had slept together for a night before coming to France. Could it be that this woman couldn't help but miss me after not seeing me for a few days? Thinking that he still had a few confidants in Huaxia who were eagerly waiting for him to return, Yang Cheng's worries were finally alleviated. That's right. Even if it's for these women who have given their love to me, I should cheer up. Isn't it just Sister Lin having a cold war with me again? There will always be a chance to break the ice wall like before. Little Qian, it's already midnight in France, yet you're still calling. It seems like you're missing you. Yang Cheng picked up the phone and joked. After all, a strong-willed woman like Mo Chinny, who had a sharp tongue but a soft heart, wouldn't act coquettishly at him for no reason. Besides, she was already busy with work. If he didn't look for her, she might not even find the time to contact him. The person on the other end of the phone didn't immediately answer, as if she couldn't answer. Yang Cheng was puzzled. What was wrong with Mo Chinny? Could it be that she had something to say that she couldn't say? However, in the next second, Yang Cheng was stunned. It's me, I'm the girl's mother. A familiar woman's voice suddenly came from the phone. Yang Cheng almost dropped his phone on the ground. Damn, Mo Chinny's mother? Wasn't that Ma Guifang whom he had met in Chuan province back then? His mother-in-law. One of them. Just like a daughter-in-law meeting her parents-in-law, it was inevitable that she would be reserved. No matter how domineering Yang Cheng was outside, he still felt a little awkward when he met his woman's relatives. He felt guilty in his heart, so naturally there was something wrong. Hee, so it's our mother. Why is she using Chinny's phone to make this call? Seriously, Chinny didn't even give Mom a phone. As Yang Cheng said this, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Wasn't Ma Guifang in Chuan province? Why would she have Mo Chinny's phone? Could it be that Mo Chinny had returned to her hometown these few days? He quickly asked, Mom, did Chinny return her hometown? Ma Guifang smiled warmly. No, this girl is busy all day. It's just that I haven't been feeling well recently, so I took the train to Zhonghai. I'm old, so I have to give in and rely on my children to take care of me. Although Ma Guifang was a woman from a village in the mountains, Yang Cheng knew very well that his mother-in-law was definitely a wise woman. Otherwise, she wouldn't have raised a daughter like Mo Chinny. Although Mo Chinny only got to her position with the help of the old CEO of Yulei before coming to Zhonghai, it was her mother, Ma Guifang, who taught her. At this time, what Ma Guifang said sounded simple, but in fact, it revealed a lot of information. First, she was not in good health, but because no one went back to see her, she could only come to Zhonghai with her sick body to rely on her daughter. This was undoubtedly because she was dissatisfied that the younger generation didn't care enough about her. Second, Ma Guifang said children and not daughter, so it was obvious that she had already regarded Yang Cheng as her son-in-law. However, this son-in-law of Yang Cheng, since the last time he left Sichuan province, they didn't have any contact at all, not to mention that he didn't know where Ma Guifang was. Yang Cheng understood this logic, and cold sweat dripped down his back. His mother-in-law's words were gentle and soft, but made him full of guilt, and he wanted to immediately fly back to Zhonghai to kowtow and apologize to her. Mom, please don't say that. I know I was wrong, and I was careless and insensible. I'm abroad now, but I'll be back soon. When I get back, I'll immediately prepare a table of delicious food and drinks to welcome you, Mom. But Chinny is really too much. Why didn't she tell me that Mom wasn't feeling well and didn't tell me that you came to Zhonghai? Otherwise, I'd rather not go abroad and wait in Zhonghai. Yang Cheng said words that even he didn't believe, and his tone was full of remorse. Ma Guifang didn't know whether to believe it or not, but hearing the tone on the phone, she felt a lot more comfortable and said, You all have your own work. How can an old woman like me be a burden to you? Yang Cheng, I also miss you a lot. That's why I asked Nizi to teach me how to call you. You don't have to worry. I just had a problem with my lumbar vertebrae a while ago. Maybe it's because I'm tired from farm work. At my age, I'm not forgiving, so it's nothing serious. Yang Cheng was stunned, and said, "Chinny is next to you?" "Yes. Do you want to talk to her?" "I'll give her the phone," Ma Guifeng said. "No, no, no." Yang Chung hurriedly denied it. How could he change it this time? Wasn't it obvious that he had tricked his daughter away and didn't want his mother? Even if he really had that intention, he couldn't do it. "Mom, look at what you're saying. It's as if I'm a heartless person. Although I miss Chinny, I still want to chat with Mom a little more." Ma Guifeng finally laughed, looking very happy. You're also a smooth talker. Don't think that I don't know. What's there to talk about with an old woman like me? All right, stop pretending. I'll give the phone to the girl. You two can talk. Yang Chung blushed with shame. Ginger was still spicier than Ginger. Maybe they had already seen through his tricks and just didn't point it out. The phone was passed on. First, Emo Chinny's coquettish voice could be heard, as if she was embarrassed by what Ma Guifeng had said. Then, she said to Yang Chung, "Your acting skills are too bad. You're so hypocritical," and my mother saw through it immediately. "Oh my, little Chanchian, you can't blame me for this. Mother-in-law has fiery eyes. She can even see through my thoughts on the phone." Yang Chung smiled bitterly. Emo Chinny giggled, as if Ma Guifeng's arrival in Zhonghai had made her feel a lot happier. She said, "When are you coming back?" Yang Chung laughed evilly. "What, little Chanchian misses her husband? Or is it hard to sleep? Didn't you and Xiangwei play with each other? I saw that you guys had a lot of fun back then." "You're going to die." Emo Chinny cursed in a low voice. "My mom is in the kitchen. Speak softly." "Oh no. Who's playing with women? What nonsense are you spouting? If it wasn't for you, why would Xiangwei and I sleep together for no reason? We're all a family in the future, so we need to get along well. It's good to sleep together, so I don't have to split up to look for him." Yang Chung laughed shamelessly. Emo Chinny was too lazy to talk about this kind of topic with this guy. She snorted and said, "It's fine if you don't want to talk about it properly. I originally wanted to know when you would be back so that I could plan how to face my mother. You're so unreliable. If my mother finds out and opposes us, I won't be bothered to stand on your side." Yang Chung thought for a moment and suddenly realized, "Little Chanchian, you can't be saying that our mother, will she live in Zhonghai from now on? What is it? Can't I?" Emo Chinny's voice immediately became a bit cold. She had always wanted to let her mother enjoy her old age in the city and take care of her. Previously, Ma Guifeng was afraid of dragging her daughter down and refused to come to Zhonghai. Now that she finally came to Zhonghai with the treatment of her lumbar spine, how could Emo Chinny let her mother go back to live alone again? Yang Chung knew that Emo Chinny misunderstood his meaning and smiled helplessly. "Silly girl, didn't you hear me say our mother? It's our, not you. How can I not want our mother to live by our side?" Emo Chinny's tone then softened. "I'm a bit sensitive about this matter, sorry, but we really need to think about our matter. I can't be with you often, and you have so many women around you. My mother will see the problem sooner or later. I'm worried. I'm worried that she won't be able to accept it." Nonsense. Which parent would be happy to accept their daughter as a man's lover? That old man in Zaihuan didn't count. This matter can't be explained in a short time on the phone. Why go back? We'll discuss it in detail. Confess what needs to be confessed, explain what needs to be explained, and hide what needs to be hidden. Don't just focus on work. Yulei won't collapse without you. Spend more time with our mother. Didn't you hear her complain that you're always too busy? Yang Chung said. Emo Chinny agreed obediently. She did listen to his words, but it was really hard to say whether she would be able to do it or not. After saying a few more words of love, the two hung up the phone. In the darkness, Yang Chung sighed. On this side, Lin Ruashi's side had fallen into a deadlock. Not only did he have to take care of Tang Wan and Choi Yun's matters when he returned to Zhonghai, he also had to worry about Emo Chinny and her mother. The worst thing was that Emo Chinny's current residence was Xiangwei's. They were neighbors. What should he do? Just when Yang Chung was too lazy to think too much and was about to lie down on the bed to sleep, he frowned and looked in the direction of the balcony. "It's you?" Chapter 549. The tall figure that was tiptoeing on the edge of the balcony had a voluptuous figure. Her legs were plump and straight, and her wavy, curly hair was fluttering in the wind. The graceful figure wrapped in a tight black leather coat was enough to make any man's blood boil. However, Yangcheng wasn't someone who had never seen beautiful women before, so he wasn't too excited when he saw this stunner in this hazy night. Moreover, Yangcheng clearly knew that Lilith, this vampire, was a 200-year-old grandmother. Your Majesty Pluto, why do you look so distressed? If there's anything you need help with, Lilith is very willing to help your Majesty. Lilith had already entered the room in a flash. She didn't even ask if Yangcheng agreed, and her fragrant and delicate body squeezed next to Yangcheng and sat down. This woman really knew how to charm people. Not to mention her tight leather coat with all kinds of hollowed-out patterns, she was actually wearing short, hot pants. Her plump buttocks sank into the mattress, and a pair of white thighs without the slightest bit of fat were exposed to the air. The tight lines exuded a charming wildness like that of a small wild cat. Yangcheng's eyes couldn't help but be a little fiery. If it wasn't for his low mood, he might have already touched her thighs and enjoyed pinching them a few times. You're not accompanying your father back to England. Don't tell me you're here to call me for supper. Yangcheng asked softly with a smile. Lilith seemed to have unintentionally moved closer to Yangcheng's arm. Her full chest pressed against Yangcheng's arm, and the feeling of elasticity and softness was just right. With a fragrant breath, Lilith said in a sweet voice beside Yangcheng's ear, "If your Majesty Pluto wants to eat supper, the name Lilith is very good." The meaning in these words couldn't be more obvious. This bold female vampire didn't know what was reserved at all, but she knew what was thrilling. Yangcheng turned his head and met Lilith's exceptionally bright, gem-like eyes. "Are you here to seduce me? In 2 days, His Majesty Pluto will return to Huaxia. Poor Lilith wants to repay him before that." Lilith looked at Yangcheng with resentment. "Is this the seduction you mentioned?" "Yes," Yangcheng nodded. Lilith smiled charmingly and said straightforwardly, "All right, then I'm here to seduce you." Yangcheng opened his mouth and smiled helplessly. "I'm not in a good mood right now. I don't want to make any jokes. If it was in the past, if a woman like you, who doesn't know what's good for you, wanted to send yourself in a tiger's mouth, I would definitely eat you up without leaving any bones. But I don't have that thought anymore. You can go back. I saved you and your daughter partly because I have a feud with the Vatican, so I just wanted to destroy them." Lilith, however, did not leave obediently. Instead, she persistently asked, "Why not now? Is it because you have a wife?" But His Majesty Pluto doesn't only have one female companion. As far as I know, Her Majesty Catherine, the Queen of Wales, can spend the night with you. Why can't Lilith? This. Yangcheng was puzzled. You even want to compete with this? Does it mean that if I sleep with Catherine, I have to sleep with all the women in the world? I'm not convinced. I can do better. Lilith pouted with a sad and weak expression. Lilith only admires you and wants to give herself to you. Can't you even satisfy this small wish? Yangcheng was indifferent. He was too familiar with women's acting skills. The one who was really difficult to deal with was Lin Ruoxi, who couldn't be seen through it all. It was easier to deal with someone like Lilith who knew how to play tricks. Lilith finally knew that her seduction, schemes, and pretending to be pitiful were useless. She stood up angrily with her hands on her hips. She glared at Yangcheng for a while and said, "Are you afraid of me? Are you afraid that you won't be able to leave me after touching me? Or which aspect of your function isn't strong enough?" These words were a little sinister. Yangcheng's cheeks twitched. Function isn't strong enough? Yangcheng could dislike the other uses of that bullsh asterisk T divine light. But what satisfied Yangcheng the most was that the divine light made his man's function unparalleled. What did men hate the most? What they hated the most was being doubted by women that they couldn't do it. "Do you think that I won't kill you just because I saved you?" Yangcheng's words were already cold, and his eyes were full of dense, killing intent. If Lilith provoked him again, he wouldn't care about this woman's life, since he was already in a bad mood. Lilith bit her lip, and a hint of fear flashed in her eyes. However, she stubbornly didn't retreat. She walked forward and approached Yangcheng. She said softly, "Your Majesty Pluto, do you know what's the biggest difference between the women of the Blood Clan and the women of the human race?" Yangcheng frowned. He didn't know what this outrageous woman of the Blood Clan was going to say. Lilith bit her thin lips, and her eyes were like silk. The blood of the women of the human race is hot, so the inside and outside of the body are hot, while the women of the blood clan, the outside and inside of the body, are all cold. These words were like a lit fuse, directly exploding several packs of high explosives in Yang Cheng's mind. The inside of the body is cold. The degree of ambiguity in these words couldn't be further increased. Not only did this girl use her appearance to seduce me, but she also took out the goods inside of her as bait. Sparks finally splashed out from Yang Cheng's eyes. In this situation, if he didn't do something, it would really seem like he couldn't do it anymore. He was in a bad mood both ways. Since this woman was so persistent, and the physique of the blood clan was excellent, unlike the women of the human race, even if he tossed and turned with his life, Lilith wouldn't be in any danger. It was a good way to vent. Thinking of this, the evil thoughts in Yang Cheng's mind immediately spread. To be honest, he had lived for more than 20 years, and most of his time was spent being a villain. It was true that he had toned down after returning to Huaxia for 2 years, but the ruthlessness and viciousness in his bones, once erupted, even Yang Cheng himself felt that he wasn't human. With a low roar, Yang Cheng suddenly hugged Lilith's waist, pulled her onto his big bed, and pressed her under his body. He directly kissed Lilith's delicate cherry lips, and his 2 big hands unceremoniously grabbed Lilith's smooth breasts, squeezing them into various shapes. Rip, rip. 2 ripping sounds rang out, and Lilith's leather clothes were torn into pieces. Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for going crazy if you get hurt tonight. In the dark room, Yang Cheng rode on the charming female blood clan's trembling body and grinned strangely. He was not joking. If he encountered a woman with a strong body, and she wasn't even his lover, it was nothing for him to suffer a little injury. Of course, he would enjoy all the craziest positions and ways to play with her. Lilith finally realized that she seemed to have gone too far, but before she could beg for mercy, Yang Cheng had already grabbed her 2 round thighs and slapped them a few times, leaving red palm marks on her snow-white skin. Lilith felt like she was a fish on the chopping board, and Yang Cheng didn't show any mercy at all. It was as if he was a butcher cutting meat. Hearing the resentful moans, Yang Cheng didn't give Lilith any chance to breathe at all. He raised his spear and mounted her, and with a straight thrust, he penetrated deep into her womb. There was a sharp moan of a woman in the room. It was unknown whether it was comfort, pain, or an indescribable release of madness. A few storms, and a few times the flowers fell. Just as Lilith said, the body of the blood clan was cold, and this kind of coldness was just enough to extinguish the heat in one's heart. When it was almost dawn, Yang Cheng finally stopped his conquest of the female blood clan below him. He lay on the bed with his limbs spread out, looking at the ceiling, feeling inexplicably calm. Lilith's voluptuous body was twisted and entangled by Yang Cheng, and her tender flesh was even pinched and beaten. If it wasn't for the excellent physique of the blood clan, her tendons and bones would have been injured, and her body would be full of bruises. After a long silence, Yang Cheng finally felt a trace of guilt in his heart. Although the woman beside him wasn't human, she was a woman after all, and she didn't have any ill intentions towards him. It was really a little inexcusable for him to use her as a tool to vent. Even if she wasn't really injured, who would feel good after being played like this for a few hours? I'm sorry, my mind was in a mess just now, Yang Cheng said in a low voice. Lilith, who was beside him, turned her head. On her charming face, her hair was messy, but she smiled sweetly. If I can exchange your apology for me, my purpose of coming tonight has been achieved. You're not angry? I am angry, Lilith pouted. But I can't beat you, so I can only be bullied by you. Moreover, I was the one who teased you first. Yang Cheng smiled casually. Listening to these words, how did he suddenly become the king of a stronghold, a street bully, and completely rely on force to suppress everything? However, what Lilith said next completely dispelled Yang Cheng's apology for this woman. This enchanting body that was like a water snake slowly wrapped around his chest, and her cold lips kissed his neck. Lilith's eyes were blurred, and with a hint of seductive shyness, she said, Actually, you can use a little more force. The recovery ability of us blood clan, is very strong. The fiercer you are to me, the more excited I feel." The corner of Yang Cheng's mouth twitched. The Blood Clan was the Blood Clan. When he was having fun with Xiang Wei and Mo Qinyi, the two women couldn't stand his torment for a few hours. But this Lilith, after being subjected to such a high intensity for a few hours, she still felt that it wasn't exciting enough. However, although she said so, Yang Cheng didn't know if she was sincere. He didn't have the desire to continue venting in his heart, so he stopped. Lilith took advantage of the time before the sky brightened and left the room with a wisp of fragrance. To the long lifespan of the blood race, human love was almost meaningless. Even if Yang Chun had a god's position and had the ability to reincarnate, it would still take a few hundred years for him to awaken. To the blood race, it was equivalent to becoming a completely different person, no longer the Yang Chun from before. She came to find Yang Cheng for a crazy night, but to a greater extent, it was due to her admiration for the strong. She didn't really want to have a relationship with Yang Cheng. Of course, Yang Cheng wouldn't drag Lilith into his lover's list for no reason. The few women around him were enough to trouble him. At dawn, when Yang Cheng was about to take a hot shower, he heard the doorbell ring. He wondered who would come to find him so early in the morning, but he still wore a nightgown and went to open the door. A tall, beautiful woman with sparkling eyes stood at the door, wearing a lady's hat and a rose-colored dress. Her calves were white and tender, and there was a bottomless ravine in front of her chest. She winked playfully at Yang Cheng. Without waiting for Yang Cheng to ask anything, the cute and naive Kathleen pounced on him and wrapped her arms around Yang Cheng's neck. She bent her legs and hung onto Yang Cheng's body. "Chin Chun, I want." Yang Cheng felt his gums ache. How could this woman speak in such a coquettish voice? He smiled bitterly and said, "How many times have I told you not to call me Chin Chun? Can't you speak normally?" "Okay, Chun Chun." Yang Cheng gave up on correcting her. He pulled the koala queen off his body and patted her delicate and resentful face. The mature version of Jane wasn't as mature as the young version. "You came to me so early in the morning just for that little thing?" Yang Cheng felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. Not long after he sent off Lilith, this queen came to find him so early in the morning. If other people had such luck with women, they might have already ascended to heaven, but why did he feel like he had become some kind of role of serving women? Kathleen didn't avoid it and obediently nodded to admit it. Her eyes were filled with desire. "Chun Chun, you'll be leaving in 2 days. It's not easy for me to see you, so of course I have to hurry up." Suddenly, Kathleen sniffed and smelled something. She giggled and said, "So I came late. The birds have already eaten the worms. This smell is so strong. They must have eaten quite a bit." Yang Cheng smiled embarrassedly. "It's good that you know I don't have that thought right now." "No, isn't the bug still here? I want to eat it too." Kathleen threw her hat away, lifted the hem of her dress with both hands, and rolled it up above her waist. Turning around, with her back facing Yang Cheng, Kathleen bent down and stuck out her butt. A pair of white buttocks, like a huge peach, with a thin seam in the middle, was unreservedly displayed in front of Yang Cheng's eyes. Her straight, triangular thighs were pressed together, clamping her buttocks tightly. This mature woman's figure was even more exaggerated than Lilith's. Yang Cheng's eyes immediately heated up. It had to be said that when Kathleen took the initiative to seduce him, if a man didn't react, then there must be something wrong with that man. What was worse was that Kathleen even turned around and revealed an innocent expression. She slightly shook her pink and white butt and muttered, "Come on, I'll eat worms too, worm." Yang Cheng scratched his head. How did his strong capital become a worm? However, he was too lazy to talk nonsense. Breathing heavily, he walked forward, tore off his nightgown, grabbed Kathleen's fat butt, and slapped it twice, leaving a few red marks. After being slapped, Kathleen moaned a few times and turned around. Her face was flushed, and her gaze became more and more blurry. Yang Cheng couldn't be bothered to care about the time. Since he had already indulged for one night, it didn't matter if he indulged for another morning. In the next moment, the thick worm directly drilled into the valley with the gurgling stream. As the saying goes, a hero's grave is a gentle place. Yang Chung naturally wouldn't foolishly think that he was a hero, but this was true. After rolling on a woman's body, he would always be in a daze and forget everything. It wasn't until noon that Kathleen, who was pressed on the bed, couldn't hold on any longer and fell asleep as if she had fainted. Yang Chung pulled out the murder weapon from her body that had been tormenting her for the past few hours and smiled wickedly. Including the time spent on Lilith, he had almost been in battle for nearly 10 hours. How many men in this world could go into battle with him so continuously? However, when he looked back at the time, he realized that something was wrong. He was still in Paris, and the fashion week hadn't ended. Logically speaking, he should be accompanying Lin Ruashi to attend various meetings. Why was he still playing a human flesh game with the queen in bed? However, Yang Chung was sure that no one had called him in the morning, and Lin Ruashi hadn't come to find him like the day before yesterday. It seemed that Lin Ruashi didn't plan to see him at all. He didn't know what this woman was thinking. She just froze him in her own world and didn't say anything. Looking at Kathleen, who was blushing and sleeping contentedly, Yang Cheng's good mood was gone. I'm really an animal. My wife is sulking and having a cold war with me, but I still fooled around with another woman for the entire night and morning. I deserve to be ignored by Lin Ruashi. But then Yang Chung sighed helplessly. I can't help it. I can resist other things like eating, drinking, gambling, and drugs. I don't care too much about it, but when it comes to women, my resistance has only been declining. It hasn't improved at all. After thinking about it, there was no conclusion. Yang Chung could only take one step at a time and try not to let down everyone who gave sincerely. After covering Kathleen's body with a blanket that was full of red marks and various marks, Yang Chung got out of bed and walked into the bathroom. After washing off the stains on his body, he changed into a relaxed short-sleeved shirt and cropped pants and walked out of the room. As soon as he walked to the resting area in the middle of the floor, he saw Edward on the sofa looking at something on his tablet. With his blonde hair cut short, Edward was wearing a normal low-collared t-shirt and linen shorts. No one would know that this young man was one of the heirs of the Rothschild family. Your skills in that area have been increasing in the past few years. Edward raised his head and smiled ambiguously. Yang Chung was speechless. This guy was still counting the time. I knew it was you who sent Kathleen over. When did you start working as a pimp? That depends on who I serve. Our Rothschild family does all kinds of business that can make a profit. As long as it's worth it, I will do it, Edward laughed. Sending your aunt to my bed is your business? If possible, I also want to send my cousin to your bed, Edward sighed. But it seems that it's easier to send my aunt than my cousin. Yang Chung took the tablet from his hand. On it was a series of real-time data, such as international crude oil futures. He couldn't understand it himself, so he returned it and said, "Don't force Jane. She's my benefactor. Don't think that I don't know what your family is planning just because I don't point it out. If you make Jane's life too tiring, it will only backfire." Edward's eyes lit up. So, you still care about Jane's feelings? Not bad, not bad. My poor cousin has hope. Yang Chung frowned and pointed a finger on Edward's forehead. I've known you for so many years, and your habit of never being satisfied is getting worse. Edward wasn't angry and showed a complicated smile. Yang Chung, do you think that even if we don't instigate Jane, she will give up? Her wish is the strongest. You can't understand how different you are to Jane. You are her dream since she was a child. How could she give up when she's so close? Yang Chung was speechless for a while. Although he knew that the businessman's words couldn't be trusted, what Jane did for him was indeed something that he couldn't repay. He saved her and her mother's lives, but she had already returned the favor of saving her life. What she did for him was obviously much more. Whenever she was needed, no matter what she was doing or where she was, she would rush to his place as soon as possible. It was the same in Hokkaido and Zhonghai. After a moment of silence, Yang Chung didn't know how to continue this topic, so he asked, "Where is Ruashi?" He knew that Edward would definitely know the situation of everyone and everything related to him, at least when he was in Europe. As expected, Edward immediately answered, "She's at the Louvre fashion show. The morning will end in half an hour." Yang Chung nodded and said, "I'll return to Huaxia in 2 days. I've already killed Goodman. the director of ULA International in Europe. No matter who Ruashi arranges for as the new director, you guys have to help her secretly. Even if the director is dead, his confidants are definitely still around. They might cause some trouble, so don't let the European branch fall into chaos. You're worrying too much about this. Edward smiled strangely. Yang Cheng didn't understand what he meant. Edward opened a web page on his tablet and showed it to Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng smiled bitterly when he saw it. It was the homepage of ULA International in Europe. The headline on the homepage was about the replacement of the CEO. Furthermore, several important departments in the company had been replaced. It could be said that the European branch had been cleansed. It was obvious that Lin Ruashi knew that something had happened to Goodman, so she had already arranged for a successor to replace Goodman as soon as he died. Moreover, although this woman was in Zhonghai, she still knew who was Goodman's henchman in the European branch. Otherwise, she wouldn't have changed the heads of some departments. She usually kept quiet and didn't say anything, but when it came to critical issues, she would have a plan in her mind. To be honest, this Lady Persephone's talent in business, whether it's her decisiveness in using people or her ruthlessness in her methods. She dismissed the executives at a whim and fell out with the partners at a whim, but she still managed to steadily improve the company. Her methods aren't simple, and it's truly amazing. It's a pity that she wasn't born into our family. Otherwise, she would have the qualifications to become one of the few female family heads, Edward said regretfully. Yang Cheng heaved a sigh of relief. Although it had been proven many times that Lin Ruashi was playing dumb, he still had mixed feelings when he heard Edward's unambiguous evaluation this time. The more things Lin Ruashi knew, the more hurtful her silence and coldness towards him was. However, he didn't have the right to say that she had hurt him. After all, he was in the wrong first. Suddenly, Edward seemed to recall something. He smiled and said, "By the way, do you still remember the cooperation between our family and Huaxia's family in Zhonghai to swallow up the Liu family?" Of course. Yang Cheng raised his head and asked, "Is there a problem?" "So far, there's no problem. But because it's not suitable for our family to suddenly show up in Huaxia, and we can't directly get involved with the family, it's hard to say," Edward said helplessly. Yang Cheng frowned. "Just say it." Edward rubbed his chin and said in a low voice, "Your Miss Anshin seems to be in some trouble recently." Miss Anshin? Yang Cheng didn't understand. What trouble could that girl have? She was just going through documents in his office and occasionally acting as a host at the TV station. No one cared about her life at all. She had endless money, and the Yin family was the second largest family in Zhonghai. Who would dare to cause trouble for her? Edward continued. Miss N's trouble doesn't come from Zhonghai. It comes from Beijing. Beijing? Yang Cheng was puzzled. Could it be someone from the Yang family? Chapter 550. It didn't take long for the international call to go through. Since it was lunchtime in Huaxia, Yang Cheng didn't think that Anshin would go to bed early. Sure enough, the call was picked up after 2 rings. Anshin's gentle voice came through, and she said with a hint of surprise, "Hubby, why did you suddenly call me? I didn't have this habit before. Did you miss me? You didn't call me when you were in trouble, so I could only call you." Yang Cheng was a little unhappy. It was embarrassing that his woman was in trouble, but he only found out about it through his friend. Anshin fell silent. After a long silence, she said faintly, "I thought I would be able to settle the matter by the time you came back, so I didn't want to tell you immediately." You didn't want to tell me at all." Yang Cheng could guess the woman's thoughts. "Don't say useless things. Tell me what it is." Anshin hesitated for a while. It was obvious that she was struggling on the other end of the phone. In the end, she was afraid that she would make Yang Cheng even angrier, so she briefly told him what had happened. After listening, Yang Cheng's face darkened. He hung up and said to Edward, "Prepare a plane. I need it any time." "You're going back to Huaxia early?" Edward said with a smile. Yang Cheng nodded, but before that, he had to go to the Louvre to inform Lin Ruashi. When he got up, he thought of something and said to Edward, "As for Catherine, tell her to take care of Ron's people when she wakes up. Ron is getting old, so he can't always be so considerate." Edward expressed his understanding. "Don't worry. Even if Aunt doesn't help, we will help you take care of the back garden." About half an hour later, Yang Cheng arrived at the banquet hall of the Louvre. At this time, Lin Ruoxi should have already come out of the exhibition area, shuttling through the crowd of men and women. It took Yang Cheng a while to find Lin Ruoxi in the inner corner. Lin Ruoxi, who was wearing a white dress with pleated straps, sat quietly on a leather chair with a string of fine pearls hanging in front of her chest. Her delicate face, which was devoid of any makeup, was expressionless. She was so cold that even if the people around her wanted to come forward and strike up a conversation, they would retreat and leave a space around her. Holding a glass of champagne in her hand, Lin Ruoxi didn't even take a sip. She was looking at the crowd in front of her and lost in thought. Yang Cheng walked to the woman's side and stood still. Lin Ruoxi slowly turned her head around. Seeing that it was Yang Cheng, Lin Ruoxi's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if she had seen a stranger. This made Yang Cheng's heart ache. He really didn't understand what was going on. "What's the matter?" Lin Ruoxi asked in a clear voice. The tone of a complete stranger made Yang Cheng want to drag her out of the venue and ask her about it. But at this time, thinking about the trouble with Anxin and Zhonghai, he could only think about it later. So he said, "I want to go back to Zhonghai in advance." Lin Ruoxi still didn't react and nodded. "Got it." Yang Cheng felt very depressed and added, "It's Anxin who is in some trouble. I'm worried that something will happen if we delay too long." "Got it." Lin Ruoxi still said these 3 words, as if everything was not something she cared about. Yang Cheng clenched his fists. The current Lin Ruoxi was even colder than when he first met her. She was like a porcelain doll without human feelings, an ice sculpture. Not only did she make people feel sorry for her, she was also so dull that it seemed like she didn't know how to communicate. The more Lin Ruoxi behaved like this, the more scared Yang Cheng was. But this woman didn't want to communicate with him at all, and he didn't know how to find a way out. After a long time, Yang Cheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Then I'll leave first." "Okay." Lin Ruoxi didn't have any intention of asking any more questions. That one word was equivalent to sending Yang Cheng off. Yang Cheng didn't delay any longer. He turned around and left the banquet hall in big strides. It wasn't until Yang Cheng's figure disappeared into the crowd that Lin Ruoxi raised her head and looked in the direction of his back, her eyes rippling. "Zhonghai, Yulei International Entertainment Company, Director's Office." Anxin was wearing a black lady's suit and a light coffee-colored pleated near-revealing skirt. She walked into the office with a white handbag in her hand. When she walked into the company, she maintained a sweet smile, but as soon as she entered the door, it disappeared immediately. She leaned against the door listlessly and closed her eyes for a while. Anxin had been troubled these past few days. What made her feel even more pained was that all of this was caused by herself. When Star of Yulei was held, she begged Yang Cheng to let her take part in the hosting job because of her passion and competitiveness. Although she achieved her goal and the results were good, and the broadcasting station even tried their best to invite her to be a permanent host, she wasn't an ordinary girl after all. It was impossible for her to keep showing her face in the same broadcasting station. Originally, she thought that after Star of Yulei passed, her hosting career was almost over. Who knew that just because she appeared on TV a few times, she would be targeted by someone who wanted to attract attention? The director of Zhonghai's Radio and Television General Administration, a young high-ranking official's son named Lu Min, actually took a liking to her. As soon as she withdrew from her job at Star of Yulei, he began to pursue her relentlessly. In the past, when the family was still a second-tier family in Zhonghai, Anxin had many suitors. However, because of the Lu family, who was engaged to her, many people flinched. After that, as the family became the second largest family in Zhonghai, very few people dared to pursue her casually. Moreover, Zai Huan, her father, only wanted to curry favor with Yang Cheng. Of course, he would do everything he could to please his daughter. If ordinary people dared to pursue his daughter, wouldn't they be sent flying without any reason? However, Lu Min was different. According to Zai Huan, the power behind this man was not to be underestimated. If it wasn't for his powerful background, how could a 31-year-old young man become the director of a municipal government agency? This was a department-level official, and an official who held the power of information and media channels. In a country like Huaxia, where the government held absolute power, a department that could control the media and public opinion was equivalent to controlling the direction of half of the society's attention. Many people who worked hard in the government until they were 50 or 60 years old rarely reached the level of a department-level official, let alone a 31-year-old man. And according to some people who are more familiar with Lu Min had only been transferred to Zhonghai for less than a year. His actual foundation was in the capital city of Yanjin. In a dangerous place like Yanjin, any second-tier family would be no worse than a first-tier family in Zhonghai, which family didn't have a ministerial figure as their backer. Perhaps it would even implicate the real power holders in Huaxia. How could a businessman like the family touch them? Because of this, Zai Huan, who was unsure of Lu Min's background and was incomparably afraid, hoped that his daughter Anxin could tell Yang Cheng about the situation here and let Yang Cheng decide what Anxin should do. To put it bluntly, whichever side was stronger, Zai Huan felt that his daughter should follow. He didn't want to offend either side. This matter made Anxin quite angry. Ever since she received Yang Cheng's care and the Rothschild family invested in the family, and Zai Huan's status rose with the tide, and he also cared about Anxin. No matter what her father's main purpose was, at least Anxin tasted the warmth of being loved by a family. Unexpectedly, when someone with real power came to harass her, her father, who had just improved his image a little, immediately became a coward again. Not only did he not dare to touch his daughter's matters, but he also directly asked her to look for Yang Cheng. He didn't even dare to express his opinion. As a result, it was as if Anxin was exposed to the air without any cover. She could only hide from Lu Min and use all kinds of reasons to reject him. And Zai Huan asked her to call Yang Cheng, but Anxin didn't dare to do so. She wasn't worried that Yang Cheng wouldn't stand up for her. Although she wasn't clear about Yang Cheng's identity, as someone that even the Rothschild family had to respect, how could he be simple? The problem was that Huaxia was different from other countries. From the fact that the Rothschild family only came to invest and didn't dare to actually operate the industry, it could be seen that no matter how arrogant the foreign forces were when it came to Huaxia, they still had to listen to the face of the Huaxia government. If that Lu Min really had an extraordinary background, and Yang Cheng offended them because of her, causing irresistible trouble, how could Anxin forgive herself? Therefore, Anxin wanted to drag it out as long as she could. She could only hope that Lu Min was just acting on a whim and would retreat when he saw that she didn't listen to him. She didn't expect that Yang Cheng, who was far away in Europe, would know about her. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Hearing Yang Cheng's heavy tone, she couldn't hide it anymore. So she simply told him what happened. I don't know if he will be angry. Anxin muttered to herself and sighed. She carried her bag and walked to Yang Cheng's desk. She sat down and prepared to deal with the documents that Wang Jie and the others sent. However, before Anxin could sit down, there was a knock on the office door. Come in. Anxin tried her best to cheer herself up and said in a clear voice. After the door was pushed open, a man wearing an Armani suit and well-tailored trousers walked in. The red and black tie on his chest made him look like a successful person. His face was fair without any facial hair, and there was a hint of maturity in his youth. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and was about 8 meters tall. Miss Anxin, it's a meaningful morning to be able to see you at your workplace in the morning, the man said with a smile. Anxin's pretty face turned pale. She bit her thin lips, stood up, and walked to the desk. Lu Min, what do you want? I already said I won't agree to it. Chapter 551. Lu Min wasn't in a hurry to reply. When his gaze landed on Anxin's graceful body, it was hard for him to look away, as if he was glued to her. Although Anxin was only wearing her usual office attire, the Japanese-style suit, short skirt, and white lace stockings perfectly displayed her exquisite figure. Her peach-like face, coupled with her slender calves and perky breasts, could easily make a man lose control of his adrenaline. This conservative yet sexy attire was naturally worn by Anxin because she was used to flirting with Yang Cheng in the office, but now it was Lu Min's turn. Seeing Lu Min's passionate gaze on her, Anshin felt a wave of disgust. She frowned and walked back to her desk to sit down so that the man wouldn't see her under her skirt. Lu Min retracted his gaze regretfully and smiled. Missin, it's always harder to chase after a good girl. The more you hate me and reject me, the more I'll try my best to chase after you. Thank you for Director Lu's appreciation, but Anshin is just the daughter of a businessman. She's not worthy of a high-ranking official like you. Director Lu, don't waste your time, Anshin said indifferently. Lu Min was still smiling as he walked to the desk. Missin, I know a good breakfast restaurant and would like to invite you for a drink. I've already booked a private room. I told you I won't agree to it. Anshin took a document from the side and lowered her head to read it, intending to completely ignore this man. A cold glint flashed across Lu Min's eyes. Missin, ever since I saw you on TV for the first time, it's been hard for me to take my eyes off you. I, Lu Min, have seen many daughters of prestigious families since I was young, but I believe that you're definitely the one who's fated with me. I'm not the kind of man who casually flirts with women. Although my words aren't very convincing, why don't you give me a chance to interact with you? Missin? I believe that Miss N isn't an unreasonable woman. If there's anything that I can't meet Miss N's requirements, please let me know. Men can't use the hard way, so they switch to the soft way, moving their emotions and reasoning with them. Anshin put down the pen in her hand, raised her head, and said, Director Lu, I really can't promise you. It doesn't matter to me whether you are really like what you said. I already have someone in my heart, and I love him very much. I will never have anything to do with another man in my life. Hearing this, Lu Min grinned. Missin is indeed straightforward, but it doesn't matter. As far as I know, the sweetheart that Missin mentioned should be the director of this company, a person named Yang Chung. Am I right? Anshin's pretty face turned cold. You investigated us. Lu Min hurriedly waved his hand and said, Missin, you don't have to be angry. It's not that I wanted to investigate, but when I asked my subordinate about your background, someone took the initiative to investigate. But Missin, you should also thank me for specially asking for your information. Oh, you want me to thank you for investigating me? Director Lu, you really know how to joke? Anshin sneered. It's like this. Lu Min wasn't annoyed. He still said modestly, as far as I know, this Mr. Yang is actually a liar. He is actually husband and wife with Yulei International's Lin Ruashi, General Lin. Although I don't understand why this man with a very ordinary resume would become General Lin's husband, there is no doubt that Mr. Yang lied to Miss In. As soon as this was said, Anshin was quite shocked. Yang Chung once told her that his relationship with Lin Ruashi was still in a confidential stage. This Lu Min actually dug out the relationship between Yang Chung and Lin Ruashi during the process of investigating her. He was really a person with eyes, and eyes everywhere. She didn't know what force was behind him. However, when someone pointed out that her man was actually a married man in front of her, Anshin naturally felt uncomfortable and slightly bitter. But this wasn't the time to be bitter. Anshin's eyes were cold, but she smiled and said, Director Lu, it seems that your investigation isn't deep enough. Don't you know that my husband has another woman and I already knew about it? What? Lu Min was really shocked. His eyes widened and his voice was a few degrees higher. Director Lu didn't hear it wrong. I, Anshin, am just someone's mistress. Moreover, I know that a man has a wife, but I still got involved and clung to him. Anshin saw that Lu Min lost his composure, and she was secretly happy. As for how unbearable she was to describe herself, she didn't care. She had a carefree personality and didn't care about ethics and morals. As long as she could anger this clingy Lu Min away, she would be happier than anything else. Lu Min's chest tightened, and the corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He sneered and said, I see, I see. Good, Anshin. Why, Director Lu, do you still want to pursue me after knowing what kind of woman I am? Anshin's smile was like a flower. Lu Min's eyes were a little gloomy. Pursue? Why not? Anshin was stunned. Was Lu Min crazy? She was already someone's wife, a mistress, and he still wouldn't let her go? Was he so hungry that he couldn't be choosy, or was her charm really that great? In Anshin's eyes, even if Lu Min was really so hungry that he couldn't be choosy, There were countless beauties in Zhonghai. Since he could find out the relationship between Lin Ruoxi and Yang Cheng, of course he would know what Lin Ruoxi looked like. Why didn't he pursue Lin Ruoxi? Anyway, he didn't care about a woman's reputation. Wouldn't it be more valuable to harass Lin Ruoxi, a married woman? This was also a kind of rebellious mentality of Anshin. She could only blame Lin Ruoxi for dragging her to play the game of smashing dolls, which scared Anshin. But in front of Lin Ruoxi, she could only call her sister and flatter her, afraid that she would make things difficult for her. Therefore, she didn't dare to say it out loud. In her heart, she always hoped that Lin Ruoxi would suffer some small retribution, so that she could balance her mentality. Moreover, Anshin also knew that there was a certain gap between her and Lin Ruoxi, whether it was appearance, background, identity, or the position in Yang Cheng's heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't have so easily cut off the idea of being Lin Ruoxi's legal wife, and would have tried all ways to pull Lin Ruoxi off the stage. Women were selfish when it came to love. If there was a chance, if it wasn't because they were helpless, who would let it go? Lu Min sneered a few times and said, "Since Missin is so honest, then I will also be straightforward. There are many women around me who want to get close to me, and among them, there are many beauties who are comparable to Missin. But the first time I saw Missin, I knew that I was Missin's woman. Now, since Missin is like this, then I think there is no possibility of marrying Missin. However, my sincerity has been trampled on by you. I will not let this matter rest." Seeing that Lu Min's elegant demeanor was gone, Anshin immediately felt that something was wrong. She forced herself to calm down and said, "What do you want?" "This is Yulei International." "Company?" Lu Min laughed. "Yulei International, so what? As long as I say the word, all the radio and television media in Zhonghai will block Yulei International's information, and all the programs of your entertainment companies will also have to stop. As long as I use some of my family's power, even if Yulei International's artists are banned, it will only be a matter of minutes." Panic appeared in Anshin's eyes. After all, she was only a young woman, and although Lu Min was only 31 years old, he was the son of a big family, a real son of a high official. He could be considered as a prince who had real power. Now that the two of them were facing each other, no matter how calm Anshin was, she was still afraid. "I'm afraid now," Lu Min sneered. Seeing Anshin's fear, he became proud. No matter how much she struggled, no matter how rich a businessman was, it was just a pile of waste paper in front of the country. "Anshin, if you know what's good for you, leave with me now. After I've played with you enough to make up for the loss of my mood, you can continue to be a vixen. I can't be bothered to care about you anymore." Lu Min's gaze became fierce. "If you continue to put on an act, even if it's your Yulei International's Lin Ruoxi or your father in Zaihuan, I will make them suffer." Anshin's legs softened, and she almost fell to the ground. She took a step back and grabbed the armrest of the chair. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. She didn't expect that not only would Lu Min not leave tactfully, but it would also cause Lu Min's dark and vicious nature to erupt. This method of doing things that did not make up for the gains made her extremely regretful, and at the same time, she was filled with powerlessness. As a woman, she could rely on her father, but her father didn't dare to care about her, and her man was far away abroad. Who else could she rely on to help her out? Thinking back to a few months ago, Yang Cheng saved her from the hands of the Lu family. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing again. She clearly wasn't a beautiful woman, so why did she have to encounter such things? Just when Lu Min was gloating and approaching Anshin with a sinister smile, someone knocked on the office door behind him. Knock, knock. Lu Min turned around and saw a somewhat familiar man standing at the door. He had a roguish smile on his face, and his beard was unkempt. He was dressed in a casual short-sleeved shirt and shorts, and he seemed to be travel-worn. Yang Cheng. Seeing the person, Anshin thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes and confirmed that it was her man. Anshin's heart almost jumped out her chest. She was so excited that she couldn't hold back her tears. Lu Min, who already knew that Yang Cheng was in Paris, was puzzled. Why did he suddenly return to Zhonghai? His face darkened. Chapter 552. I've only been gone for a few days, and someone is already trying to steal my woman and ruin my company. It seems like Zhonghai is getting more and more difficult. Yang Cheng scratched his messy hair and put his hands into the pockets of his pants. He walked to Lu Min and waved at Anshin. Anshin understood what the man meant. She jumped over happily and hugged Yang Cheng's neck. She kissed him on the cheek. TSK, the sound was dragged out on purpose. Although an XIN was still feeling helpless earlier on, she didn't know how Yang Chun had suddenly returned to Zhonghai. But now that her man had suddenly appeared, all her burdens were lifted off her shoulders. She snuggled into Yang Cheng's arms like a little bird and smelled the familiar scent of the man. She calmed down and wasn't afraid of Lu Min at all. Lu Min knew that this couple's performance was meant for him to see. It could be said that it was a direct display of strength. However, he wasn't an impulsive person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been assigned to a department-level position at such a young age. Although his family background was important, he was too weak. His family wouldn't push him out to embarrass himself. So you Yang Cheng, why do you look like a beggar? Could it be that those good-for-nothing men these days rely on this kind of ugliness to attract women? Lu Min sneered. Yang Cheng looked at his clothes and chuckled. I understand you. You're jealous. I'm jealous. Haha, you don't seem to know who you're talking to, Lu Min said arrogantly. Yang Cheng ignored him. He placed his hand on Anshin's butt and touched it, causing Anshin to pout coquettishly. Lu Min sneered and looked at Yang Cheng with interest. You're a married man and a vixen who's a mistress. Do you think you can embarrass me by acting like this? Aren't you guys being too childish? I'm not interested in knowing whether you're embarrassed or not. However, this is my office, and I didn't say you could come in. If you don't leave, I don't mind throwing you out of the window. Smiling, Yang Chun pouted his lips towards the French window behind him. He wasn't interested in talking to this fellow. This was a building with dozens of floors. Throw it out? It was better to say that he wanted to kill someone. Lu Min wouldn't take it seriously. In his eyes, Yang Cheng was just a nobody who didn't know his background and only knew how to put on airs and climb up by relying on women. Thus, he smiled disdainfully. The one with the surname Yang. Do you really think that you're so great just because you've latched on a Lin Ruoshi's thigh? If you know what's good for you, then get out of my way and let Anshin follow me. Let's have some fun. When I'm bored, I'll return. Without waiting for Lu Min to finish, he suddenly felt his neck being strangled by a steel-like hand. His body was involuntarily lifted into the air. His legs kept swinging, and he really couldn't break free. His face turned red, and he couldn't breathe. Yang Cheng's emotionless voice came into his ears. I already said, if you don't leave, I'll throw you out. You're really full of nonsense. Lu Min didn't know how he was caught by Yang Cheng. His vision just blurred for a moment, and the situation became like this. It was like a dream. When he heard Yang Cheng's words, a cold aura drilled out from his bones. Lu Min realized that this man seemed to really want to throw him out of the window. At this time, Yang Cheng didn't care about Lu Min's violent reaction at all. In his eyes, the man in his hands had no reason to live. No matter what his background was, even if he was the son of the president of the country, Hua Xia, today he had snatched his woman in front of him. Even if he was in a hurry to die, he had to fulfill his wish. Anshin's mouth was half open, and her face was full of surprise. She didn't expect Yang Cheng to do what he said. He really wanted to throw Lu Min out of the building. It was broad daylight. If a living person suddenly fell from dozens of floors, not only would it disturb the pedestrians outside, not only Yang Cheng, but Yulei International would also get into a lot of trouble. What's more, Anshin knew that Lu Min's background was definitely not an ordinary official family. If he poked a hornet's nest, even if Yang Cheng's background was extraordinary, he would probably be in trouble. Hubby, don't. Anshin was anxious. She ran up and pulled Yang Cheng's arm and begged, don't do this. If you throw him out of the building like this, the company will also have social pressure. His background is not simple. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the people of Yulei International. Yang Cheng was stunned. He stopped his footsteps. He didn't think that it would be so meticulous. To protect his woman, killing a mangy dog was not a big deal. But he forgot that he was in the company, and doing this would implicate others. After thinking for a while, Yang Cheng sighed. This was the restriction that came with returning to the secular society. The human heart was made of flesh, and he had to think for others. He threw Lu Min, who was almost suffocating, to the corner of the wall. Lu Min hit the wall, and blood flowed out of his nose. Get lost. Don't do anything that will make me want to kill you. Yang Cheng said indifferently and looked at him coldly. Lu Min was really scared. He didn't expect that there would be a madman who didn't care about his life and wanted to kill him. Ever since he was young, who dared to do this to him? He looked at Yang Cheng and Anshin with hatred. He touched the blood on his nose, but he couldn't care less about the dirty look on his face. He quickly ran out of the office. Sigh. It seems that he still won't give up. Anshin was smart. She naturally saw through Lu Min's unwillingness and sighed. Yang Cheng reached out his hand and touched the woman's fair and tender face. He gently pinched it. Your man took a plane for more than 10 hours to rush back to Zhonghai just because of a phone call from you. Don't give me that sad look. Anshin finally understood. No wonder she just talked to Yang Cheng on the phone last night and met Yang Cheng this morning. Moreover, he was covered in dust. After receiving her call, he immediately returned to Zhonghai from Paris and rushed here as soon as he got off the plane. Her heart was suddenly filled with sweetness, as if she had knocked over a honey pot. She looked at Yang Cheng with her charming eyes and beautiful face. She went forward and hugged Yang Cheng tightly and buried her head in Yang Cheng's chest. She recalled that from the first time they met, Yang Cheng had always been like a knight who protected her. Whenever she was in danger, he would always appear by her side in time. No matter how big the problem was, it seemed that as long as he appeared, it would be easily solved. Some women tried their best to get rid of their dependence on men, but in the end, they often felt lonely in their hearts. It wasn't that they didn't want to have a harbor to anchor in. It was just that they couldn't meet the right person. And Xian had originally thought that she would be like a drifting duckweed with a father like that in this life, in the family. She would become a sacrifice for a marriage alliance without anyone to rely on. However, the appearance of the man by her side had saved her from a world of darkness that never saw the light of day. Thank you, hubby, Anshin murmured. Although it's not nice to say it out loud, I feel that I'm happy to be your lover. Yang Cheng held the little vixen's slender waist with one hand. Hearing his own woman say happy gave him a sense of accomplishment, but he pretended to be angry and said, Why didn't you tell me earlier? Lu Min has been pestering you for more than 2 days, right? And Xian pouted, feeling wronged. I thought I could solve it on my own. Besides, he didn't do anything too outrageous. He's just always sticking to me. I don't want to bring you trouble because of me. Yang Cheng directly slapped Anshin's buttocks, causing a crisp pa sound, causing the woman to moan. Afraid of causing trouble for me? If I hadn't come back in time, this wouldn't have been a problem, but an accident. Seeing that Yang Cheng's expression wasn't good, although she knew that part of it was fake, Anshin was still a little anxious and pleaded, Hubby, don't be angry, I also heard from my dad that Lu Min's background is very impressive, so I was afraid that it would bring you a lot of pressure. That's why I hesitated. I didn't mean to hide it from you. Hubby, please calm down. Next time something like this happens, I'll be the first to tell you immediately. Yang Cheng also knew that Anshin was definitely thinking for him. Even if he had shown her a portion of his strength, it was still abroad after all. Everyone knew that Huaxia was separated from the international community. Therefore, he needed to put on an act so that the woman wouldn't be afraid to tell him in the future. In the past, when he snatched Anshin to be his own woman, part of it was because of a man's pride and possessiveness. After all these days of working and living together, this little vixen had already occupied quite a bit of a place in his heart. He really couldn't bear for her to be hurt in any way. After Anshin finished speaking, she was afraid that Yang Cheng was still not satisfied. She pursed her cherry lips, raised her head, and kissed Yang Cheng's lips. Her charming cheeks were crimson, and her beautiful eyes were like water. Anshin tried her best to convey her remorse and love. From time to time, she would even use her lilac tongue to lick his lips. This kind of wet ambiguity was even more irresistible to a man than a kiss. What a vixen! Yang Cheng's eyes instantly became fiery. Even though he had already enjoyed the two beauties, Lilith and Kathleen, in Paris, after returning to Shanghai, he found that Anshin, who had always been by his side, was still as tempting as ever. "Hubby, I want it," Anshin said coquettishly. Her breathing had also quickened, and her full breasts were pressing against Yang Cheng's chest, moving up and down. Yang Cheng pinched Anshin's but with one hand, enjoying the plump feeling, and said with an evil smile, "I've been sitting on the plane for more than 10 hours, and I haven't showered for an entire day. My body is dirty, and you little vixen want it already?" "I don't care. A vixen isn't afraid of being dirty," Anshin said with a coquettish smile, and the tip of her pink tongue slid from Yang Cheng's cheek all the way to Yang Cheng's neck. Yang Cheng's whole body quivered. Not caring whether it was dirty or not, he immediately pressed Anshin's soft and delicate body onto the spacious office desk beside him and pounced on her